Chapter 1178. In many people's eyes, Lu Yin's unification of the outerverse had ended up benefiting someone else, which was both laughable and lamentable. Moto Weave Taiyamo Palace. Gong Ling stared at his gadget in disbelief. How could something like this happen? Sect leader, could it be fake? This young Master Tian wants to trick us into joining the Alliance Conference? Gong Cho guessed. Gong Ling shook his head. It can't be fake. He wouldn't dare. Gong Chao's expression was ugly. If such a thing really happens, what should our Taiyamo Hall do? There's no place for us in the outerverse, and the innerverse won't easily accept us either. Wherever we go, we'll be ruled and oppressed. Gong Ling calmly replied, "Let's go participate in the Alliance Conference. I want to see how this young Master Tian is going to deal with this by using this information as bait to force us to participate in the Alliance Conference." Gong Cho nodded. Yes. Gong Ling looked at the message again and he thought of Lu Yin. This person had climbed up step by step from the lowest rung of society and had gone through countless trials and tribulations, but he had still been defeated by a single piece of news. It was truly lamentable. This was the power of the Neoverse, and it was the core of the human domain. So what if the Outerverse Master was an Outerverse Master? Lu Yin's matter had filled him with dread towards the Neoverse, as it was not a place where ordinary people could go. Young Master Tian's announcement had shaken the entire Outerverse, and all of the powers were discussing the matter. In the end, they all agreed to participate in the Alliance Conference, including Myriad City, the Dark Phoenix clan, and even the Sea King's Dome and the Lan family. The Starfall Sea had yet to fully recover due to the Sixth Mainland's invasion, which meant that they would have to stay in the Outerverse for a while longer. This was the answer that the Hall of Honor had given them. In reality, they did not know that the Starfall Sea was essentially gone. The horizontal black hole spanned across the Neoverse, the Cosmic Sea and the Innerverse, and it had separated the Starfall Sea from the Innerverse. Otherwise, it would not have been connected to the Sixth Mainland. They were destined to remain in the Outerverse. Young Master Tian's lips curled up when he saw the replies from the Outerverse's various powers. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then that's fine too. Just give me a random promise and I'll be able to live peacefully. What does the life and death of these natives have to do with me? Once I've settled down, I'll take over the brothel. It's time for me to have a taste of the top courtesan. Behind Lu Yin, eccentric Qi had a respectful expression on his face. The power and information that young Master Tian possessed were not something that the Innerverse and Outerverse could compare to. Nobody in the Innerverse knew that the Outerverse had been gifted to the Sixth Mainland. This was the disparity between them. However, the Innerverse would soon find out, and the shock would be no less than that of the Outerverse. The Blaze Realm had to think of a way out as soon as possible. Otherwise, once the Outerverse was taken over by the Sixth Mainland, the Blaze Realm would become the power closest to the Sixth Mainland. When he thought back to the border war between the Outerverse and the Sixth Mainland, as well as the Sixth Mainland's invasion of the Innerverse, he felt a chill run down his spine. Compared to the Sixth Mainland, the Blaze Realm was nothing more than an ant that could be easily annihilated. I must think of a way. Hugging young Master Tian's thigh is a shortcut. On the other side, Mu En led Lei Nu, Xu Jing and Lu Yin away from the Seven Courts' southern border and entered the Glory Realm. This was his first time in the Neoverse and he was filled with curiosity about the Glory Realm. How could such a large continent appear in the universe? It covered a small portion of the Neoverse, and this was only a fragment of the shattered Fifth Mainland. It was a relatively intact fragment. Lu Yin could imagine how large the Glory Realm was. Sitting in a cosmic great aurora, Lu Yin watched the stars on both sides fly past him. He couldn't even see the stars. All he could see was a scene. As the light in front of him illuminated the universe, the spacecraft trembled and they arrived at the Glory Realm. Lu Yin couldn't describe what he was feeling at that moment. He only knew how insignificant he was. The Glory Realm was a piece of land with no end in sight. The moment he stepped onto the Glory Realm, Lu Yin's body sank. The gravity here was much stronger than the outside world and the space was different as well. He raised a hand and unleashed an attack with a power level of over 200,000 in an attempt to tear through the void, but he couldn't. Xu Jing saw Lu Yin's actions and said, "The Glory Realm is the most intact continent in the Fifth Mainland. And it also retains the Fifth Mainland's original stability of space. Most people would find it difficult to tear through the void unless they unleash an attack with a power level of over 300,000. Lu Yin understood. Many places had stabilized their own space in order to prevent enemies from tearing through the void. If the Glory Realm required a power level of 300,000 to tear through the void, then Lu Yin believed that if the Hall of Honor wanted to tear through the void, they would have to surpass an emissary or use some special method. Lu Yin inexplicably felt a chill run through his body. He was being observed by a powerhouse and he walked over to the window and looked out. Powerful rune lines soared into the sky without any concealment, intimidating the surroundings. This was a portal, and Lu Yin could imagine that there were powerhouses overseeing the Glory Realm in all directions. The area that a super powerhouse could protect was usually quite large. Lu Yin had thought that the Glory Realm would be very prosperous, or at least that there would be a lot of people. However, when he arrived here, all he saw was land. It was desolate and he didn't know how far it stretched. Above him was a boundless dark sky, and from time to time giant creatures would fly past, bringing with them gusts of wind. Lu Yin could see all sorts of rune lines appearing not just from humans but from other creatures as well. There was a deep roar as Mu En disembarked from his spacecraft. Lu Yin, the tear girl, and Xu Jing followed closely behind. In the distance, an incomparably huge creature that was 10,000 meters tall and tens of thousands of meters long was walking over. Every step it took caused the ground to tremble and it felt like the world was collapsing. Lu Yin was astonished. This creature looked like a cow, but it was covered in a thick layer of fur. The two curved horns on its sides formed a heart shape and it looked very docile. However, there were quite a few rune lines which were equivalent to 300,000 enlighters. This was a bit exaggerated as any random beast could be so powerful. However, given its size, it was normal for it to have such a high number of rune lines. This is the ancient Xianxia, and it's also the Glory Realm's transportation tool. The space here is too stable and unpredictable weather changes often occur. Spacecraft are no longer suitable for travel and accidents happen very easily. Thus, the ancient Xianxia has become the best transportation tool. It's fast, has decent defenses and can even warn of danger. Although it seems powerful, it can't attack and can only defend, Xu Jing explained. Lu Yin watched as the ancient Xianxia walked over step by step. This thing can run fast. Mu En glanced at Lu Yin. Let's go to the Hall of Honor. Lu Yin nodded and took a deep breath. He was finally going to reach the highest point in the human domain. That was where the strongest powerhouses of the human domain resided, as well as the most ruthless enforcers and lockbreaker organizations. That was the core of the human domain. The ancient Xianxia was very docile and it allowed Mu En and the others to board. Its back was very wide as it was tens of thousands of meters long. There was even a house built on its back which was very luxurious. The four of them entered the house and the ancient Xianxia let out a low roar. It changed direction and took a step forward, and Lu Yin suddenly felt the scenery change as they left their original location. He was stunned as this speed was too fast. Tall mountains appeared on both sides of them, and then they disappeared to be replaced by a boundless ocean. The ancient Xianxia let out a low roar and the ocean disappeared as well. It had crossed the ocean with 1 foot. Mu En smiled at Lu Yin. So, this is the Glory Realm. This is your first time here, right? Lu Yin nodded. It's different from what I expected. Mu En was curious. How is it different? Lu Yin replied, I thought that there would be many people living here and that there would be many cities or even floating planets. But this is really just a piece of land and it's very desolate. Mu En smiled. Desolate? That's because this land is too big. A normal person wouldn't be able to walk all the way to the peak of a mountain in their lifetime, and it's very difficult for an explorer to walk from one mountain to another. It's just as difficult for a hunter to cross an ocean. Have you ever thought that perhaps the planets in the universe were actually separated from this land? This was the first time Lu Yin had heard of such a theory, and he instinctively wanted to deny it. After all, the universe was so big that even if the land was even bigger, it couldn't possibly have separated planets from it. But after some thought he fell silent. No one knew how the universe had formed, and even though there were many guesses, the existence of cultivation civilizations, technological civilizations, and even other civilizations had long since refuted many of these theories. Was this the Hall of Honor's theory? As for why you said there aren't many people, that's because you can't see, Mu En said. Lu Yin was confused. Can't see? Is it because it's too fast? Mu En shook his head. It's hard to explain. I'll point it out to you when I see it. Thank you, presiding judge, Lu Yin said gratefully. Mu En sighed. Do you feel any resentment? Lu Yin was stunned and he looked at Mu En seriously. No. Mu En and Lu Yin looked at each other for a while before bursting into laughter. Someone else might, but you really don't. You've experienced too much and you know how cruel the universe can be. But even if you don't feel any resentment, I still have to say it. Mu En paused for a moment before continuing. The battle of the 5 prodigies of the stars was originally a trap for the Neo-Human Alliance to see and lower their guard. Only if this trap succeeds can the 5th mainland be saved. The Neo-Human Alliance would never have imagined that the mountain and sea realm would explode, and in this trap, everyone is a pawn. The mountain and sea realm exploded? Lu Yin cried out in disbelief. Mu En was puzzled. You don't know? Lu Yin shook his head. This junior has always been in the Eternal Kingdom and I've never heard of this. Mu En nodded. So that's how it is. He then told Lu Yin a few things, selectively telling Lu Yin about them. Mu En's own knowledge was limited, and Lu Yin's knowledge was even more limited through Mu En's narration. Right now Lu Yin only knew one thing. The Neo-Human Alliance had been schemed against and the 6th mainland was out of luck. Lu Yin took a long time to digest this information. It was no wonder why Mu En had told him about this trap. The 6th mainland had invaded, and Lu Yin had already guessed that the 5th mainland was plotting something while he was still in the technocracy. This trap had been set up for too long. Not just the Neo-Human Alliance, but anyone would have fallen into this trap. The battle of the 5 prodigies of the stars had been a trap, and it was no wonder that the golden platform had been able to sweep away the Xianxia and the others. Even if this was a trap, the Hall of Honor would not have been willing to sacrifice their generation's top geniuses. Lu Yin had been unlucky because he had not been on the golden platform. Chapter 1179. A low growl came from the distance. It was another primordial Xixiu. It quickly flew past, startling Lu Yin. Lu Yin respectfully asked Mu En, "Presiding judge, may I contact my family and friends?" Mu En shook his head. "You can't contact anyone before the test results are out. Besides, you're in the glory realm, so you can't contact anyone even if you want to. It's too far away." Lu Yin felt helpless. "But don't worry. Someone from Everlasting Island has already rushed over to the glory realm and will personally witness your test. There won't be any accidents and no one will target you." Lu Yin was grateful. "Thank you, presiding judge." Mu En smiled. "I'll do my best to protect you. After all, I have a good relationship with the Sea King, and you're his prospective son-in-law." Lu Yin laughed dryly. Son-in-law? He had forgotten about that. Right when Fazi's position had been taken away, an elder from the Sea King's dome had contacted Mu En and spoken up for him. From the looks of it, Mu En could be considered one of Lu Yin's own people, and he was also Lu Yin's helper in the interstellar arbitration. The glory realm seemed barren, but according to Mu En that was because it was too big and the people here lived in different environments. Lu Yin did not understand this. The primordial Xixiu was rather frequent in the glory realm, and Lu Yin had already encountered several of them in such a large area. Those who could ride the primordial Xixiu were not ordinary people. They either had illustrious backgrounds or were powerful enough. After all, the primordial Xixiu belonged to the Hall of Honor, and one had to pay to ride one. The primordial Xixiu was the highest form of transportation, and there were other forms of transportation below it, including flying, burrowing, and so on. Lu Yin saw an enormous bird-like creature fly past, and its size was comparable to the centipede he had seen in the Northline flow zone. "That's a country," Mu En said. He was very patient with Lu Yin. Lu Yin was surprised. "A country?" "That's right. It's a country that lives on the back of a creature. That bird is called Never Falling. It will never fall. It will always fly in the glory realm from east to west, from south to north. It has been going back and forth for many, many years. That country is called the Never Falling Nation," Mu En said. Unfalling country sounds powerful," Lu Yin muttered. Mu En smiled and said, "That's just what it sounds like. A truly powerful force wouldn't be exposed like this, as it would be very easy for them to be attacked." Lu Yin nodded, though he did not fully understand. After coming to the Neoverse, rune lines were no longer as useful. After all, this was the home of the gods and everyone in the Neoverse knew the methods of the home of the gods. The home of the gods would also prevent rune lines from spying on them. Thus, Lu Yin could not always rely on rune lines to determine a person's strength. A shocking battle could be heard in the distance, and when Lu Yin looked over he could tell that it was a battle between 300,000 to 400,000 enlighters. However, the battle disappeared in an instant as the primordial Shiho was simply too fast. Not long after, Mu En stopped the primordial Shiho and pointed at a giant abandoned machine in the distance. "There's a world over there." Lu Yin was surprised and stared at the abandoned machine. The abandoned machine was huge, even larger than the primordial Shiho, and that was just the parts that were above ground. If the parts that were buried underground were included, the machine's size would probably exceed any large spacecraft that Lu Yin had ever seen. World. Mu En smiled, and the star energy at his fingertips turned into a beam of light that he pointed at a certain spot. Lu Yin followed the star energy beam and saw a sphere embedded in the machine. If one did not look closely, they would not have noticed it at all. It was just a component. "That's the world," Mu En said as he pointed his star energy at the sphere. Space rippled and his star energy disappeared. A moment later, a man wearing strange clothes appeared in front of the sphere, and the man bowed towards Mu En. "Greetings, presiding judge." Mu En nodded. Lu Yin was astonished as it really was a world. "Is this a folded space?" Mu En shook his head. "This hides the entire world." Lu Yin was stunned. "A world? Hides it?" "That's right. For example, your Great Yu Empire can store the entire space of the Great Yu Empire when you reach a certain level. It's just like when you create a cosmic ring and it can be attached to an object or transform into a strange shape. There are no less than 3,000 such worlds in the Glory Realm," Mu En explained. Lu Yin was stunned as this was the first time he had heard of such a thing. Storing a world like a cosmic ring? Inconceivable. 3,000 worlds. Mu En had a complicated expression. "The Glory Realm is very dangerous. Even though it's under the rule of the Hall of Honor, it can't control everything. Where there are people, there will be conflicts. The competition between the powers here is no less than in the innerverse and outerverse. There are also natural phenomena and strange creatures. Thus, many powers do not expose themselves in the Glory Realm. Instead, they store the entire world and hide it." Lu Yin did not understand. There are more than 3,000 worlds. Does that mean that all of them have powers that surpass the Sword Sect in the Day-Night clan? Mu En laughed. "Of course not. There are very few powers that can compare to the Sword Sect and the Day-Night clan." "If that's the case, then why don't the Sword Sect, Day-Night clan and other innerverse powers enter the Neoverse? Don't they want to?" Lu Yin asked. This question had been bothering him for a long time. He had thought that it was because they could not enter, but when he thought about the smokescreen mountains and the brothels, he felt that the Sword Sect would not be any weaker than them. Mu En replied, "There are limited resources. Do you think that the Sword Sect would be willing to hide? They're like the Celestial Sect, they must have their own part of the starry sky. Only when they have their own part of the starry sky can they establish themselves in the new universe. The new universe can't give them that part of the starry sky, so they can't take it. What's the point of just entering the Glory Realm and hiding? It's very difficult for them to even recruit disciples. These hidden worlds have limited resources, and it's too difficult for them to produce exceptional geniuses. As time passes, they will only decline." Lu Yin understood. If the Sword Sect transformed itself into a spatial zone and hid, then they would only be able to recruit disciples from their own world. How many people could they possibly recruit? It should be known that they could recruit the entire innerverse and outerverse. Although it was difficult for these 3,000 worlds to recruit exceptional geniuses, there were still some that would occasionally appear. These people belonged to the Hall of Honor. Lu Yin's thoughts were complicated as he looked at the spherical space in the distance. He did not know how to describe it, but he felt that if he had to hide away with the Great Yu Empire and live like this forever, he would not be satisfied. Perhaps this was just the pursuit of survival. Mu En looked at Lu Yin and smiled. "What I just told you is just one situation. There's another." He then had the primordial Shiho continue towards the Hall of Honor. "Another situation?" Lu Yin was curious. Mu En explained, "Hiding one's own spatial world is a separate world. However, transforming one's own spatial world into other forms is not necessarily a hidden world. There are also those who can travel through the Glory Realm or even the Neoverse. Those worlds are not simple and they do not fear anyone." Lu Yin was shocked. "You mean that a world can travel through the Neoverse?" Mu En nodded and his gaze traversed the boundless space. He suddenly had the primordial Shiho stop again and he tapped lightly with a finger. The void rippled and rippled, filling the entire world. Within these ripples, a ball of light was fixed in place and a voice was heard. Presiding Judge Mu En? Why are you stopping us? Lu Yin looked at the ball of light in surprise. It was the ball of light that was speaking. Mu En's tone was not as casual as when he had spoken to the spherical space. He was rather solemn. I'm just bringing a junior to broaden his horizons. Junior? That child? Lu Yin felt like he was being watched and he felt a chill run down his spine. He stared at the ball of light and the next moment his gaze traversed through space to see a strange world. This world was completely made of light and every ray of light had many people living in it. There were also cities, mountains, plains and even planets. This was not light but rather a universe of stars. Finally, he saw a pair of eyes that were filled with dignity. Lu Yin woke up in an instant and beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. Mu En placed a hand on Lu Yin's shoulder. Not bad at all. Your Hall of Honor really knows how to find talents. This child is definitely not any weaker than your methods. In fact, he might even be stronger. Aside from the Xianxia, no one else is his match. Mu En smiled. He is my Hall of Honor's method. How troublesome. I thought that you'd be generous and open up the competition for the slots instead of secretly observing us. You were even willing to hold the Supreme Tournament, but it seems like we're not fated with it. I thought that we would have a chance, but it's a pity. Mu En continued. The tournament is open to the entire universe and your child of light can participate as well. You'll have to rely on your own strength to obtain a slot. Try to nurture him as much as you can since there's still some time. That kid beside you is way ahead of the child of light. How are we supposed to compete with him? I'm leaving. Lu Yin watched the ball of light disappear and looked at Mu En in confusion. Mu En explained, this is also a world of its own and it's different from the spherical space. He runs around in search of resources, and his strength is naturally on a completely different level from the spherical space. Although he can't compare to the Sword Sect or the Day-Night Clan, he's not far behind in many aspects. If he was thrown into the Innerverse, he would be able to compete with the top powers of the 8 Great Flow Zones. Lu Yin sighed. This was the Neoverse. The Glory Realm had more than 3,000 great worlds, and this was the core of the human domain. When the 6th mainland had invaded, if these 3,000 great worlds had all sent people to attack, then the 6th mainland might not have been able to invade even if they gathered all of the 9 filaments. Senior, what's the Supreme Tournament? Lu Yin asked. Mu En replied, this is a secret that only the upper echelons know about, but it's fine to tell you in advance. He paused for a moment before continuing solemnly. The Supreme Tournament is a tournament that the Hall of Honor, the Astral Beast Domain, the Technocracy, and the 6th mainland hold for the younger generation. The goal is to boost the morale of the human race and unearth elite geniuses. It's also to determine the 10 strongest youth so that they can obtain supreme opportunities. Lu Yin blinked. Why did this sound so familiar? Right, the competition between the 5 children of the stars. Wait, the 6th mainland? The 6th mainland? Lu Yin exclaimed. Chapter 1180. Mu En had expected Lu Yin's surprise. You don't need to know the details. All you need to know is that you should try your best to become the strongest 10 in the Astral Supreme Tournament. It will be of great help to you in the future and it might even determine your future. Senior, isn't the 6th mainland isolated? Why is it participating in the Astral Supreme Tournament? I can't tell you the details, Mu En said. In reality, he wasn't too sure either, as there were some things that he wasn't privy to. Lu Yin's mind was in a mess. There were too many things that he wanted to know, but he didn't know what to ask. Mu En explained, whether it's the Starsibyl Sex divination or the Neoverse competition for the 5 children of the stars, it's not just to set up a trap. There's another important reason, which is to create a list of 10 people. Originally, the human domain had 5, the astral beast domain had 3, and the technocracy had 2. However, due to special reasons, the 6th mainland has to join as well. It's already difficult to allocate the spots, so we might as well hold this tournament. The Hall of Honor has confidence in you, and if you can compete for enough spots, it'll boost the humans' morale. Mu En seemed to sense Lu Yin's confusion and he solemnly said, this time it's not a fake event. Try your best to compete for it. Few in the human domain have ever obtained this opportunity. Many geniuses have been born in the human domain, but very few have actually obtained this opportunity. Once you obtain it, you will no longer be yourself, but rather the hope of the entire fifth mainland. Muin's words were true and Lu Yin believed him. Even though he still cared about the sixth mainland, if Muin didn't say anything he wouldn't be able to ask. The Astral Supreme Tournament? Lu Yin was looking forward to it. He had walked step by step from Earth to the Astral Combat Academy, the Innerverse, the Master of the Outerverse, and even the Mountain and Sea Realm, the highest stage of humanity. He had seen too many powerful peers along the way. The 10 Arbiters, the 5 Children of the Stars, the Realmlings, the Daoist 3 Skies, the Astral Beast Domain, and Skymander's List experts. The technocracy would definitely have their own as well. These powerful peers would compete on the same stage, and just thinking about it made him excited. In the past he might not have been confident, but now his eyes were bright. Not far away, Lei Nu and Xu Jing also heard Muin's words. They already knew that the Starry Sky Supreme competition was very stressful. This trip to Progenitor Chen's tomb was also a preparation for the Starry Sky Supreme competition. As Fatsi, they were supposed to be the pinnacle of the younger generation in the human domain. However, they felt immense pressure. Disregarding everything else, Lu Yin was not easy to deal with as he was basically a monster. The 10 Arbiters were the same, and there was also the 6th mainland's Daoist 3 Skies. There were simply too many powerful peers. Fortunately, there was still some time before the Starry Sky Supreme competition, which was enough time for them to improve again. With that thought in mind, they turned around and returned to their rooms to continue cultivating. The black storm connected the sky and the earth, isolating the space that could be seen. The primordial Shishio had no choice but to stop and wait for the storm to pass. According to Mu'en, this was the celestial phenomenon of the glory realm. Even with the ancient Shishio's defense, it was very likely that it would be swept away. Lu Yin was curious as to why Mu'en didn't take action to bring them across, but he didn't say anything. The black storm wreaked havoc for 2 days. 2 days later, a streak of light illuminated the area ahead. The weather changed again, becoming extremely hot. The ancient Shishio activated and continued towards the Hall of Honor. Lu Yin sat on the ancient Shishio's back when he suddenly saw a card fly through the void. He reached out to grab it, but Muin stopped him in midair. Muin's expression turned serious as he looked at Lu Yin. "Did you forget what I told you? Don't touch anything here." Lu Yin was puzzled. "That card?" Muin solemnly replied, "That's a world." "World?" Lu Yin was stunned. Muin solemnly said, "If I hadn't stopped you, your hand would have been gone." Lu Yin felt a lingering fear as he had actually wanted to grab a world. "That card is the same as that ball of light?" Muin nodded. "The Glory Realm has more than 3,000 great worlds, and these are just the ones recorded. There are also a few ancient powerhouses that have awakened from deep slumber. These powerhouses were born in ancient times, and they might have been sealed in ice or lock broken. They can add a great world to the Glory Realm at any time. That card just now was an unrecorded great world. Is it very powerful?" Lu Yin was curious. Muin shook his head. "I don't know, but it gave me a very strong intuition that I shouldn't provoke it." Lu Yin was truly shocked. Although that ball of light was respected by Muin, it wasn't at the level that he shouldn't provoke it. Was that card really that powerful? Muin looked in the direction that the card world had disappeared with a solemn expression. An unrecorded great world like this was an uncertain factor, and it was a pity that the Crimson Bell had been taken away by the Inquisitor. Otherwise, Muin would have definitely stopped it and seen what kind of great world it was. The appearance of the card world made Muin fall silent. The Glory Realm was large, but it wasn't as large as the Outerverse. With the Glory Realm's strength, it should be able to completely monitor it, but with so many great worlds appearing, it was impossible to monitor them. Some great worlds had been born from other great worlds, and just as Muin had said, some ancient powerhouses had awakened, and they might even be able to create their own great worlds. Lu Yin suddenly felt that although the Hall of Honor was tyrannical and sometimes selfish, it was precisely because of their existence that the human domain could develop peacefully. Otherwise, if these 3,000 great worlds were to leave the Neoverse or engage in an all-out war, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Hall of Honor was like a mountain that suppressed all unstable factors. It might be unfair to some, but this was the best outcome as it could at least protect the interests of ordinary people. If the entire human domain was a continent of war, where various great powers were constantly in conflict, then the Hall of Honor would be an empire that unified the entire continent. It sacrificed some people's interests to protect the lives of the majority. Actually, the Great Eastern Alliance was the same. Back then, the media had praised the Great Eastern Alliance for ending the various weave wars in the Outerverse. This was definitely unfair to the weaves, but it had protected the majority. In essence, there was no difference between the Great Eastern Alliance and the Hall of Honor. Entering the Glory Realm had truly broadened Lu Yin's horizons. Aside from the spherical spatial worlds, the radiant world and the card world, he also saw a microscopic world. The smaller the world, the safer it was in the Glory Realm. Aside from these hidden worlds, Lu Yin also saw the people who lived on the Glory Realm's continents. He saw many cities, each of which was very large and had their own unique environments. For example, there was a floating sun above a city that was specifically used to provide light and heat for that city. There were also cities built underground that were wrapped in a strange substance that could not be crushed even by the weight of the primordial Xixiu. There were also cities built on leaves that could not be seen unless one looked carefully, as they might even be mistaken for ants. The Glory Realm was filled with many unimaginable kingdoms. Those who dare to build their kingdoms on land either don't have the ability to turn it into a world, or they are very confident in themselves. The latter situation is far too rare. The Mavis family lives on the back of an incomparably large tortoise, and they travel through the Glory Realm. The Smoke Eater Mountains originally belonged to the Glory Realm, and there are also brothels, Sirius Sect and Everlasting Island, Muen said. Lu Yin asked, did the 7 courts have one in the past as well? Muen nodded. Lu Yin understood. The behemoths of the Neoverse that he had heard of probably all had the confidence to live on the Glory Realm's continents. Later on, they had left for various reasons, and this continent had all belonged to the Hall of Honor. The Hall of Honor was located at the center of the Glory Realm, and they were not far from it. After passing through a boundless forest and seeing many powerful beasts, Muen suddenly stopped the primordial Xixiu and frowned as if searching for something. He then looked at the ground and fixed his gaze on a drop of water. Lu Yin looked over and found it strange. A drop of water? It had not evaporated. It had not seeped into the ground, and it had simply fallen to the ground like a glass ball. Senior, is that a world? Lu Yin asked. Muen nodded and jumped down from the primordial Xixiu, approaching the drop of water. Lu Yin, Tear Girl and Xu Jing followed closely behind. As Muen disappeared into the water, the 3 of them looked at each other and entered the water as well. This was indeed a hidden world, a world hidden within a drop of water. This world was completely filled with water. When the 3 of them entered, Muen immediately isolated them from the water, his expression extremely ugly. Lu Yin's group looked forward and their pupils shrank. Countless corpses floated in the water, spreading out endlessly. Not only were there human corpses, but there were also corpses of all sorts of creatures of various sizes. It was as if all of the creatures in this world had died. These corpses all had one thing in common. They were abnormally old, as if many years had passed in a single moment. Muen's tone was gloomy as he led Lu Yin's group into the distance. With his speed, they quickly traversed the entire world. They did not speak. There was no life in this world. Regardless of whether it was humans, animals, or plants, they were all dead. The deathly stillness was chilling. They've been poisoned, Tear Girl muttered. Lu Yin looked at the corpses around him and suddenly thought of something. It's a life-poisoned death. Muen suddenly stared at Lu Yin. You know about it? Tear Girl and Xu Jing stared at Lu Yin warily. Lu Yin replied, I'm not sure, but someone in the Outerverse was poisoned with similar symptoms. Their life force was sucked dry, and that poison came from the Neo-Human Alliance. It's called Death 91. Muen's eyes narrowed. When did this happen? The Innerverse and Outerverse have been separated for about 1.5 to 2 years. Why was that person poisoned? Muen asked. Lu Yin replied, I didn't know at first, but I later searched the Shenwu continent and found someone from the Neo-Human Alliance. That person was doing experiments and researching death qi. Muen was puzzled. Aside from you, does anyone from the Outerverse Hall of Honor know about this? Thank you, brothers, for your continued support. Over the next few days I will update 3 times a day. The 3rd update will be shorter, but Windborn has already done his best. Let's keep this up for a few more days. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 1181. When he heard Muin's question, Lu Yin's heart sank. This was bad. The Sun family had told Elder Nuha that Elder Nuha wanted to destroy Shenwu continent, but Lu Yin had stopped him, which had exposed the Daoist sect. If Mu En contacted Elder Nuha, then not only would Elder Nuha reveal that Lu Yin could enter the Daoist sect, but he might also reveal the existence of the blood-colored bell. Lu Yin's ability to enter the Daoist sect was not that big of a deal, and he could fool Mu En, but he would not be able to hide the blood-colored bell. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Yin's mind, and he said, Junior reported to Master Yuan, and he personally swept through Shenwu continent. Mu En nodded as he did not suspect anything. They all knew about Lu Yin's relationship with Master Yuan, and Lu Yin would not lie about this matter. Since Lu Yin had dared to mention the Shang poison, it meant that he was not hiding anything. Otherwise he would not have said anything. It was precisely because Lu Yin had mentioned it that Mu En did not suspect Lu Yin, and he had only asked about it. The Shang poison here is not number 91. It's at least number 70 or even higher, Mu En said. Lu Yin had already known that the number behind the Shang poison indicated the degree of toxicity, but he had not expected that the Shang poison would be so powerful. This was enough to poison an entire world to death. He thought back to the Outerverse assassins, and it was said that they had killed hundreds of billions of people with their poisons. However, those people had only been ordinary people, and many of the people here were experts. To be able to store a world like this meant that they were at least envoys. Wait, there were more than 3,000 worlds, so there couldn't be more than 3,000 envoys, right? That was impossible. They searched the entire world, but they could not find anyone from the Neo-Human Alliance. Mu En led Lu Yin's group away and then proceeded to burn down the entire world. What a pity. If it wasn't for the Shang poison, it would have sold for quite a high price, Mu En said. Lu Yin was puzzled. Sold. Xu Jing explained, the sale of great worlds is a special feature of the Neoverse. As long as one reaches the level of an envoys, they can store a certain area and use special materials to create a great world. This kind of great world can be sold, and most of the great worlds in the Glory Realm can be purchased or customized. Lu Yin was speechless. That was possible? Could a great world be made? Lu Yin's knowledge. No wonder there were 3,000 great worlds. It turned out that it could be done. This gave him a fright. He thought there were more than 3,000 emissaries. The water-drop great world was completely incinerated by Mu En. Finally, a very simple and unadorned stone fell from the void, which Mu En put away. Lu Yin guessed that it was a material used to create a greater world. That was to say, with this material and with the help of an emissary he could create a great world. The universe was vast and full of wonders. There had never been such a rumor in the innerverse or outerverse, and even if there had been, Lu Yin would not have heard of it because he had never come into contact with it. Furthermore, he believed that it was impossible for such a material to end up in the innerverse and outerverse. The destruction of a great realm caused everyone's hearts to sink. The Neo-Human Alliance was all-pervasive, and their methods were even more vile. Lu Yin suddenly recalled Silver's mention of by Wuxian and the list of immortals. He originally wanted to tell Mu En about this, but after some thought he decided against it. First of all, it would be pointless to tell Mu En. Mu En was only a presiding judge and he didn't have the ability to investigate the list. Secondly, who knew if Mu En was someone from the Neo-Human Alliance? Sometimes the more unlikely a person is, the more likely they are. Lu Yin's many years of experience had made him calm and steady, and he wouldn't reveal everything. He knew that a loose tongue could cause trouble. One thing about the immortality list is the silver bill. The Neo-Human Alliance might not know about what Lu Yin had told them, and Silver couldn't possibly reveal it. If the Neo-Human Alliance found out about what Lu Yin had told them, then it would be troublesome and it might even lead to a disaster. Not long after, a light appeared in the farthest distance that Lu Yin could see. When he saw the light, the area around him seemed to change. It became warm, safe, and holy. This is the Hall of Honor. Don't rashly use the Scripture of Eternity to investigate, Mu En warned Lu Yin. Lu Yin was startled as he had just wanted to see how many rune lines there were in the Hall of Honor, but after hearing Mu En's warning he quickly reined in his thoughts. He couldn't even see how many rune lines there were in the Sea King's dome, and it hurt his eyes. The Sea King's dome was more than an entire galaxy away from the Hall of Honor. If he rashly used the Scripture of Eternity to investigate the Hall of Honor's rune lines, he would definitely be unlucky. Thank you for the warning, Senior, Lu Yin said gratefully. Wen sighed emotionally. The universe has existed for countless years, and since the birth of humanity, countless powerhouses have appeared, creating countless civilizations and cultivation methods. In this vast path of cultivation, the scripture of eternity is definitely the best. The rune progenitor is also one of the pinnacle existences of humanity. You were lucky to be able to cultivate the scripture of eternity. If possible, try your best to visit the home of the gods. There are many ruins of rune technology there. Junior will remember. Lu Yin looked up and his pupils shrank. The primordial Xianxia was too fast, and in the blink of an eye he had approached the Hall of Honor and seen the entire human domain. This is the Hall of Honor? Lu Yin looked around in shock. He couldn't see the peaks of towering mountains, and there were white clouds, rivers, giant beasts, stars, and even galaxies spiraling around them. Everything around him was immersed in an indescribable radiance. The sea covered the stars and the rivers contained worlds. He saw numerous flourishing worlds and strange life forms. There weren't just humans here. There were all sorts of life forms as well. There were beautiful flower fairies, dignified ancient apes, and endless sacred pythons. Trees that were millions of meters tall soared into the heavens, and streams of air flowed down from them. There were palm-sized humans living on the trees, and they looked curiously at Lu Yin and the others. The primordial Xianxia was currently a flower that bloomed in the middle of an ocean. One flower, one world, and this flower supported more than one world. Many people were riding various life forms in the sky, and in the distance, tens of millions of people were kneeling towards the tall mountain. Countless experts from the Hall of Honor were everywhere, and at the very top, there were ripples that separated the heavens, making it seem as if the Hall of Honor had been separated from this part of the universe. Lu Yin couldn't see the end of it. The Hall of Honor was just too big. It only took up 1% of the glory realm, and while it seemed like a small number, it was still enormous when compared to the entire glory realm. There are more than 3,000 worlds, and the Hall of Honor has nearly 100 hidden within. These worlds are doing everything they can to enter the Hall of Honor and obtain our protection, Moon said. Lu Yin looked around in amazement, unable to describe his current feelings. He felt like he was an ant in front of the Hall of Honor. Over there. Lu Yin looked into the distance in surprise. A seemingly normal mountain peak had a corner severed, and that corner definitely wasn't normal. The Hall of Honor's mountain couldn't possibly collapse either, as it seemed to have been caused by an attack. Moon followed Lu Yin's gaze and said, "Let's go. I'll take you to the adjudicator world." Tear Lady and Xu Jing bid farewell to Moon. They took their leave, glanced at Lu Yin, and then left. As the ruler of the human domain, the Hall of Honor gave people a feeling of light, warmth, tolerance, and gratitude. They provided the greatest possible help to everyone who came here. However, under this light, there was also the most ruthless, and most powerful law enforcement group in the entire human domain. This law enforcement group was called the Interstellar Arbitration Court. The Neoverse's greatest characteristic was its various major worlds. Each major world hid countless unknown civilizations, and the interstellar arbitration was also hidden within a major world, and it wasn't an ordinary one. Moon led Lu Yin across half of the Hall of Honor and into a giant tree. They followed the tree to the very bottom where the adjudicator world was located. Light above and darkness below. The adjudicator world was like a nutrient for the Hall of Honor, forever hidden at the very bottom. The scene before Lu Yin's eyes changed, and the moment he entered the adjudicator world, he felt a chill run down his spine. He looked around and saw a dark sky. Although he couldn't see anyone, he knew that he had been watched the moment he entered. If he made any strange movements, he wouldn't be able to survive for even a second. This was a starry sky filled with stars. Lu Yin believed that there would be many people from the tribunal on each of these stars. These people were decisive and cold-blooded, and it was precisely because of their existence that the Hall of Honor was the absolute leader of the human domain. Lu Yin knew that he was currently in the hands of the human ruler's sword. He saw the sharpest sword of the entire human domain's law enforcement, and didn't say anything else and led Lu Yin to the innermost giant star. The moment they entered, Lu Yin paused and beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. He could feel countless pairs of eyes staring at him from all directions. These gazes were filled with ruthlessness, killing intent, and mockery. These gazes came from the powerhouses of this star. Lu Yin almost couldn't breathe. This feeling was similar to the first time he had come to the Great Yu Empire's imperial court. Back then he had only been a sentinel, but the gazes of the cruisers and hunters had suffocated him. Now he felt the same suffocating sensation again, but the difference was that the gazes here were filled with killing intent. These people were like beasts that only knew how to kill. "What are you looking at?" A stern shout shook the star and even the entire adjudicator world. Lu Yin suddenly sobered up and there was another person in front of him. He couldn't see the person's face but the person's back was facing Lu Yin. The person raised his right hand. "If you keep looking I'll destroy you." Wen walked out from Lu Yin's side and came to the person's side. He respectfully said, "My apologies, Mr. Invincible. These people are used to it. Please calm down." Lu Yin looked at the person. This person had suppressed the entire adjudicator world with a single sentence? That was too terrifying. "Mr. Invincible? Could it be?" The person snorted and his gaze swept past Moon before landing on Lu Yin. His gaze softened and he smiled. "Don't be afraid. If anyone dares to bully you I'll take care of them for you." Lu Yin's eyes lit up and he immediately bowed. Honorary disciple Lu Yin greets senior brother. This man was Eversky Island's senior brother, Heizage Invincible. He was a terrifying powerhouse whose power level exceeded 1,000,000, and a single sentence from him was enough to suppress the entire adjudicator world. "Thank you, brothers, for your continued support. For the next few days there will be 3 updates every day. The third update will be shorter, but Windborn has already done his best to extend it for a few more days. Thank you, brothers, for your support." Chapter 1182. In the entire Neoverse, there were only a few who could stand shoulder to shoulder with unrivaled Sage. In the Arbiter realm, there was only one person who could suppress unrivaled Sage and that was the Arbiter. Lu Yin had heard Heizage Shinwei mention unrivaled Sage before. Although he had only mentioned his name and didn't know the specifics, Lu Yin felt that unrivaled Sage's strength was on par with Master Yuan's. Unrivaled Sage smiled and nodded, patting Lu Yin's shoulder. "Come, I'll take you to the Arbiter. I believe that you aren't controlled by the Neo-Human Alliance, but the outcome will be decided by the Arbiter." Lu Yin nodded and followed behind unrivaled Sage. With unrivaled Sage around, Lu Yin felt more at ease. He had an enemy in the Hall of Honor, which was one of the 9 great counselors, the Day-Night clan. However, the 9 great counselors only dealt with worldly matters, and they were not the ones who truly controlled the Hall of Honor. The Arbiter was an existence that the 9 great counselors could not influence. Lu Yin had long heard of the Arbiter's Arbiter, especially after he had stolen the blood-colored bell. He had dreamt of the Arbiter chasing after him many times, and that fear was still unforgettable. When he thought about meeting the Arbiter he panicked, extremely panicked. His theft of the blood-colored bell hadn't been exposed, right? Definitely not. Lu Yin stood on the scale in amazement, as this was the first time he had seen someone being judged stand on a scale. There were 2 sides to the scale, life and death. The Arbiter's judgment would decide which side the scale would favor. Not everyone had the right to be judged in such a manner. There were many planets in the Interstellar Arbiter Court, but there were only a few scales. Only those who had reached a certain level were qualified to be judged by the scale. Most people would be judged with a single sentence and they would not be brought here. Lu Yin was from the younger generation and logically speaking he did not have the right to be judged by the Arbiter himself. However, he had Master Yuan and Everlasting Island behind him and he was also a master of the Outerverse. Just being a master of the Outerverse was enough to invite the Arbiter. The Outerverse was a very large territory that made up the human domain, and only the Arbiter had the right to judge a master of the Outerverse. Besides unrivaled Sage and Mu En, there were 2 other Arbiters, Mu of Despair and Death's Shadow. Lu Yin curiously looked at despairing Mu, a solemn middle-aged man who looked a little old. This was the presiding judge who had helped the Day-Night clan. Lu Yin had heard of this presiding judge who brought despair to others. Many people spoke of him with fear and hatred. As for Death's Shadow, Lu Yin had seen him before. During the battle between the Cosmic Sea and the 6th Mainland, Death's Shadow had brought along the blood-colored bell. This person was said to be the strongest and oldest of the 3 Inquisitors, and it was said that he was of the same generation as the Inquisitors. Lu Yin's gaze attracted Mu of Despair's attention. Mu of Despair looked at Lu Yin with a smile and a nod, appearing very friendly. Lu Yin returned the greeting, becoming even more wary of this person. The trial begins. The head judge's voice rang out. However, the head judge was nowhere to be found. The three chief inquisitors were already used to the fact that the head inquisitor did not show up easily. Invincible Sage wasn't surprised either. This wasn't the first time he had experienced a trial. He was certain that he hadn't been controlled by the death chi, but he was also certain that he had used it to cultivate. He didn't know how the head judge would judge him, but he had no choice. He had to go through this trial. Right now, the person Lu Yin looked forward to the most was Mr. Mu. Master, you've been absent for so long. It's time for you to show up and support your disciple. The scales stopped moving and the three chief inquisitors looked solemn. Invincible Sage looked at the highest point of the scale where the head judge should have been. There was no one there, but he knew that the head judge was staring at Lu Yin. In truth, he didn't have much confidence in Lu Yin. He was well aware of the Neo-Human Alliance's methods, so how could Lu Yin escape so easily? Lu Yin might not even know that he was being controlled. Everlasting Sky Island felt guilty towards Lu Yin. If they had known that the Neo-Human Alliance would act, they would have told Lu Yin the truth. At the very least, he would have had a chance to grab the golden curtain and disappear with it. The trial was a process of mental struggle, especially when it involved one's own fate. Lu Yin's breathing almost stopped. After a while, the head judge's voice rang out. Judgment. The three chief inquisitors and Invincible Sage all stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin's body moved as an invisible force pushed him towards one end of the scale. That end was life. Lu Yin couldn't control his body at all, and he only relaxed when he saw that it was life. Invincible Sage also relaxed and was overjoyed. Wen smiled and nodded. The shadow of death's expression couldn't be seen. It was just a shadow that was very similar to the monkey. The despairing Mu and Mu Tianluan's eyes flashed as they looked at the head judge. You haven't been controlled, but you've cultivated death energy. I hope that you can remain true to yourself and not be controlled by the death energy. Although there is no distinction between good and evil, it can be easily guided. Death energy is a dark and murderous force, the head judge said in a low voice as he gave his final judgment. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat. He had indeed been found to have cultivated death energy. His strength was transparent in front of the head judge, but fortunately, the head judge was open-minded and didn't make a fuss about it. Lu Yin quickly bowed. Thank you for the reminder, Lord Judge. Invincible Sage looked at Lu Yin in shock. He had cultivated death energy? Even he hadn't been able to tell. Wasn't death energy a cultivation method unique to the Spectre clan? How could a normal person cultivate it? Muan also looked at Lu Yin in confusion. Mu Tianluan then said, Lord Head Judge, death chi is a cultivation method used by the Spectre clan. Anyone who cultivates death chi will be suppressed by a higher level of death chi once they encounter a Spectre clan member. Since this child has cultivated death chi, it's very likely that he will be manipulated by the Spectre clan in the future. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he stared at Mu Tianluan. Mu Tianluan still smiled faintly and he even glanced at Lu Yin. Lu Yin clenched his fists. This was the kind of person who could kill without spilling blood. Mu Tianluan, the head judge, has already made his judgment. Do you want to change it? Invincible Sage barked as he stared at Mu Tianluan. Mu Tianluan smiled. I wouldn't dare. Mr. Invincible understands death energy, so you should know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Death energy is easy to suppress and it's even easier to control. That doesn't mean that it won't be controlled in the future. Invincible Sage wanted to retort, but he couldn't. Death energy was indeed like that. The difference between superior and inferior was too obvious. Once suppressed, the death energy within one's body would be controlled, and it would be useless even if one's mind remained intact. He looked at Lu Yin helplessly. Lu Yin was just thinking about how to explain that he couldn't be suppressed by death energy when the head judge spoke up. This child's death energy cannot be suppressed or controlled. Mu Tianluan was stunned as he hadn't expected the head judge to say such a thing. Third update. Thank you, brothers, for your continued support. Third update. Fewer words, but it will be updated for a few more days. Freewind has done his best, thank you. Chapter 1183. Lord Inquisitor, even if the death energy in this child's body cannot be controlled, it can still be guided. Furthermore, this child is one of the human domain's top geniuses and one of the Hall of Honor's methods. If news of him cultivating death energy spreads, it will be detrimental to the Hall of Honor, Mu Tianluan continued. There are thousands of paths to cultivation. Back then, Progenitor Qin went against the Daoist sect's orders and merged his clone with the giant's bloodline to walk the path of invincibility. The Daoist sect was magnanimous, so why can't we follow suit? The head inquisitor asked. Mu Tianluan frowned and looked at the empty seat with a strange expression. Mu En and Death's Shadow also looked over curiously. The head inquisitor had never spoken so much, and he was clearly protecting Lu Yin, which was not right. With the head inquisitor's personality, this protectiveness was too obvious. Even if Lu Yin had Master Yuan and Eversky Island's backing, the head inquisitor would not be so protective of Lu Yin, as he was one of the Hall of Honor's true rulers. Even Wudi could tell that the head inquisitor was protecting Lu Yin, and he looked at Lu Yin strangely. Was this child related to the head inquisitor? Lu Yin did not feel anything, as he did not understand the head inquisitor. He only thought that the head inquisitor was just and fair, so he smiled. Thank you, Lord Inquisitor. Lord Inquisitor is fair and impartial. Mu Tianluan was still unwilling to give up, and he looked at Lu Yin. Child, you don't understand death energy. We are not targeting you on purpose, but with your status, cultivating death energy will cause too much of an impact. It's also very vile. What do you think? Lu Yin blinked. I think it's fine. Muen's lips twitched and he felt like laughing. Wudi's lips curled up. Mu Tianluan did not understand Lu Yin. Lu Yin was not afraid of anything, and he had even almost overturned the day-night flow zone. He naturally would not be intimidated by a mere inquisitor. How did you suppress the death energy and cultivate it? If it's not stable, you can't continue cultivating and you'll have to cripple your death energy, Mu Tianluan continued. Wudi barked. Mu Tianluan, are you trying to force him to tell you his cultivation technique? Interesting. Since that's the case, tell me your cultivation technique, secret technique, and everything that happened since you were young, such as when you were beaten up, when you peeked at a girl while she was bathing. Everything. Mu Tianluan glared at Lu Yin, completely ignoring invincible Heizage. Lu Yin met Mu Tianluan's gaze and slowly said, nothing to tell. Mu Tianluan raised his eyebrows, his gaze cold. Mu En stood up. Since the head judge has determined that Lu Yin is not being controlled, he may be freed. He then looked at Lu Yin. You've suffered, child. Lu Yin bowed. Thank you for your concern, Judge Mun. He then bowed towards the empty seat at the top. Thank you for your judgment. Mu En nodded with a smile. The shadow of death disappeared. Mu Tianluan stood up with a gloomy expression. Just as he was about to leave, Heizage Wudi grabbed his shoulder. He looked at Heizage Wudi, who stared at him and exerted some force. Mu Tianluan's expression changed. Mr. Wudi, what are you trying to do? It's nothing. I just want to say that my everlasting Sky Island isn't a place that's easy to bully. His right hand exerted force, crushing Mu Tianluan's shoulder. Mu Tianluan didn't even make a sound. Xianxia Wudi loosened his grip and coldly harumphed. Mu Tianluan continued to walk forward and left. Mu En sighed. Lu Yin put down the scale and Heizage Wudi asked, since little Yin is free, he should be able to regain his identity as Fatsi. Mu En nodded. Don't worry, the head judge just instructed me to make a request to the 9 directors. Heizage Wudi was puzzled and he asked in a low voice, what's little Yin's relationship with the head judge? Mu En was puzzled as well. I don't know. You don't know? How would I know? Heizage asked. The two looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin was confused as he was still immersed in the incident with Mu of Despair. He had to admit that it had been too satisfying. This guy had helped the Day-Night clan back then and now he had finally gotten his revenge. Right, since Lu Yin is back, the Hall of Honor can remove Bu Lao from his position as overseer of the Great Eastern Alliance. Lu Yin was shocked. Appointing Bu Lao to oversee the Great Eastern Alliance? He hadn't known about this. Mu En was troubled. I'm sorry, Mr. Wudi. This matter was decided by the 9 directors, and it has nothing to do with the interstellar arbitration. We have no right to interfere. Don't give me that. The 9 directors are just on the surface and it's not like I don't know about that. Mu En smiled bitterly. Even so, as the head judge, I can't order the 9 directors around, right? Heizage Wudi thought about it and agreed. I'll look for the head judge. Mu En did not say anything and instead had someone bring Lu Yin's cosmic ring and gadget over to him. Lu Yin silently put away the cosmic ring. He should have been happy, but the matter of Bu Lao overseeing the Great Eastern Alliance had put him in a bad mood. He had only been captured by the Neo-Human Alliance for a short period of time, and now someone from the Hall of Honor was eyeing the Great Eastern Alliance. With the Hall of Honor's prestige, this Bu Lao might actually be able to smoothly take over the Great Eastern Alliance. Mu En left and Haizij Wudi brought Lu Yin away from the arbitration realm. "Senior brother, who is Bu Lao?" Lu Yin asked. Haizij Wudi replied, "I know you have many questions. Come, I'll tell you all about it." Lu Yin nodded and followed behind Haizij Wudi. There were many trees planted in the Hall of Honor and they were very tall as well. Streams of air cascaded down from them like waterfalls. Lu Yin and Haizij Wudi reached the top of a tree, but they still could not see the peak of a nearby mountain. From this position, however, they could see a rather panoramic view of the scenery. In the distance they could even see the setting sun, which cast a beautiful reflection on the surface of the sea. Lu Yin had seen countless sceneries in outer space, but none of them could compare to the Hall of Honor. This place was truly like a paradise. Haizij Wudi told Lu Yin many things, including how the mountain and sea realm had exploded and formed a horizontal black hole that had been pulled towards the sixth mainland, as well as how the outerverse had been gifted to the sixth mainland. Muin's knowledge was limited, or perhaps he was unwilling to speak, but Haizij Wudi did not have such concerns. The people of Eternal Sky Island were not good at hiding things from their own people. Lu Yin was shocked, as he had never imagined that so many things would happen after he had been captured by the Neo-Human Alliance. It was no wonder why the sixth mainland had been able to participate in the Supreme Tournament. The races behind the horizontal black hole and the sixth mainland's vengeance had all been set up by progenitor Hui. Lu Yin could not imagine how much intelligence he had to be able to plan for so long. However, this thought only flashed through his mind and he did not dwell on it. It was too far away from him, and what he cared about the most right now was the outerverse. Is it really confirmed that the outerverse has been gifted to the sixth mainland? Lu Yin asked again, still in disbelief. Haizij Wudi helplessly replied, "If we don't, then the sixth mainland's three progenitors won't help us, and a calamity will befall my fifth mainland. At that time, let alone the outerverse, the entire human domain, the technocracy, and the astral beast domain will be finished." What kind of creature is it that's being blocked? How can a progenitor be helpless against it? Lu Yin asked. Haizij Wudi seriously replied, "I can't tell you right now. Once you become an emissary, you'll be qualified to know." Lu Yin was melancholy. An emissary? How far away was that? He was just a hunter. "The most important thing for you right now is to prepare for the Supreme Tournament. I know that you've improved a lot, but don't underestimate the others. Even during the mountain and sea realms struggle, some people might not have been able to display their full strength. If we can know about that situation, then so can others." Lu Yin's eyes trembled and he earnestly replied, "I understand, senior brother." Haizij Wudi sighed. "Back then your eldest apprentice brother failed. You can't fail. If I become one of the 10 strongest people in the Supreme Tournament, what will I get?" Lu Yin couldn't help but ask. Haizij Wudi didn't answer and he merely smiled. "A great opportunity in a wider world." Lu Yin didn't understand. Haizij Wudi didn't explain further. "Wait here. I'll help you get Foxi's position back. If I don't hurry him, who knows how long it'll take." "Senior brother, I want to contact the outerverse," Lu Yin said. With his gadget, it was impossible for him to contact the outerverse from the Neoverse glory realm. Haizij Wudi said, "Come, I'll take you somewhere." He then led the way. The Hall of Honor space was the most stable out of all the places Lu Yin had ever seen. Only envoys could tear through the void and move about, which was something he couldn't do. Haizij Wudi could do it, but he wouldn't do it out of respect for the Hall of Honor. After so many years, the Hall of Honor had still been the ruler of the human domain. Although it was tyrannical and sacrificed some people's benefits, it still allowed the majority to live a normal life. Even Everlasting Island had to maintain its respect. Lu Yin followed behind Haizij Wudi, passing through numerous towering trees that reached into the heavens until they arrived at the foot of the Hall of Honor's main mountain. This mountain bears the weight of the Hall of Honor. In the beginning, the Hall of Honor only had one mountain, and it was named Realm Mountain. Lu Yin stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up. He couldn't even see the top of the mountain, not even from a tree. "There's no need to look. You can't see anything with the naked eye. Let me tell you this. Even I wouldn't be able to topple this mountain, Heizij Wudi said. Lu Yin was shocked. Heizij Wudi was a powerhouse with a power level of more than 1,000,000, which was enough to rank him at the peak of the human domain. He was comparable to Master Yuan, and in the sixth mainland he would be a cosmic imprinter. How could he not topple a mountain? Realm Mountain contains many great worlds, and one of them is called the Starlink Great World. Have you heard of this name before? Heizij Wudi asked Lu Yin. Lu Yin found the name familiar and his eyes lit up. An internet company that connects the entire universe? Heizij Wudi nodded. That's right. The Starlink Network company connects the entire universe. Their headquarters are located at Realm Mountain, and they are under the protection and supervision of the Hall of Honor. Lu Yin recalled that the Starlink network originated from the Innerverse. They had originally wanted to connect the Innerverse to the Outerverse network, but they had never been able to do so. They could only develop systems like the Iron Blood system that connected fixed regions or territories. Chapter 1184. Shui Chuanxiao had purposely caused Endless Weave's defeat and proposed the idea of connecting the entire universe's network once again. Starlink Network had won the bid and become the largest network company in the universe. The reason why they had succeeded was not only because they had paid a huge price, but also because they had built all kinds of systems for the various forces over the years. These systems could be connected instantly. It could be said that they had seen this day coming and were just waiting for the issue to pass. When Lu Yin had first found out about this matter, he had asked Enya about it, and she had told him that someone from Starlink Network had approached Shui Chuanxiao and reached an agreement with him. That was how Shui Chuanxiao had intentionally caused Endless Weave's defeat. Lu Yin had always been curious about Starlink Network. This company had seen the future and had found the right person. This was no longer a matter of foresight. What made them think that Shui Chuanxiao would be able to help them? What made them think that the entire universe would be connected one day? All of this made Lu Yin curious. Right, how many honor points do you have? Wudi suddenly asked. 20, Lu Yin replied. Wudi nodded. That's enough. Most people can't enter, but 20 honor points are enough. He then placed a hand on Lu Yin's shoulder and his figure flashed. By the time Lu Yin could clearly see his surroundings, he had already arrived at a sealed space. There was a figure nearby, but it did not move. Wudi said, "Go on in. Just walk over. I'll hurry the 9 directors." Lu Yin nodded and walked over. Soon, the space in front of him rippled and he disappeared with a single step. Lu Yin had thought that Starlink Network would be filled with technology, and as the headquarters of a network company, it should be filled with all sorts of technology. However, after entering, he discovered that this was not the case. This place was actually very beautiful, like a paradise. As soon as he entered the Astral Link Major World, a vertical screen of light swept past him and then it turned green. Lu Yin passed through the screen and entered. He was surrounded by beautiful scenery of mountains and rivers, and in the distance, there was a tower-shaped building that pierced through the clouds. The Adjudicator Realm was the heavens while Starlink Network was its own world. Lu Yin immediately sensed the difference. This was the difference between worlds. This Starlink Network was probably only equivalent to 1 star in the Adjudicator Realm. He did not use his domain to sweep the area, and instead just flew towards the tower. From time to time, people would pass by and look at him curiously, but they didn't ask him anything. Rather than calling this a great world, it would be better to call it a sealed space. Whether it was the Arbitration Great World or the Star Union Great World, there didn't seem to be many people. They shouldn't be called worlds at all. At this moment, a white figure flashed past in the distance, heading south. Although Lu Yin did not see many people after entering the Astral Link Major Realm, there were still more than 10 of them. He did not pay much attention to them at first, but suddenly he stared at a white figure and frowned in confusion. That person looked very familiar. That was a woman. Her face was covered in a veil and she wore white clothes. Even though he couldn't see her appearance clearly, her eyes were extremely familiar and he couldn't help but stop. After cultivating for so long, Lu Yin was confident that his memory was still very good. He was sure that he had seen those eyes somewhere before and they were both familiar and unfamiliar. Lu Yin trusted his intuition. He had definitely seen that woman before. As he thought about it, he chased after them. However, he did not dare to chase them in the sky as it would be too conspicuous. Instead, he chased after them on the ground. That woman's strength wasn't bad and she was a cruiser. However, she couldn't compare to Lu Yin and she couldn't sense him at all. In the sky, the woman in white flew for more than an hour before landing on a nearby mountain and disappearing in an instant. Lu Yin leaped over the mountain peak and looked down. His pupils shrank and his expression became very interesting. The mountain peak was concave and the center of the depression was a hot spring. At this moment 2 women were in the hot spring. Even though the mist was faint, Lu Yin could still see them. Pure white, grand, slender and black-haired. These were the only things that Lu Yin could think of in an instant. At that moment he also saw the woman's appearance. Bai Shui. Lu Yin was stunned. Who was that? Inside the hot spring, one of the women's eyes turned cold, and she suddenly turned to look at the mountain peak. How dare you? She slapped the hot spring water with one hand and splashed it at Lu Yin. The water quickly froze in midair, transforming into a white ice sword that slashed at Lu Yin. Lu Yin was shocked. What a sharp sword technique. He raised a hand and flicked his finger, causing a huge force to shatter the ice sword. Even though the ice sword was sharp, it could not get close to Lu Yin. Sorry, it's just a misunderstanding, Lu Yin hurriedly explained and turned around. Within the hot spring, the 2 women put on their clothes and flew into the air. One of them took out a sword from her cosmic ring and slashed at Lu Yin. The tip of the sword froze and the void froze as ice flowers spread out. This attack shocked Lu Yin once again. This attack? With a bang, the woman's sword was frozen by Lu Yin's domain. Even though her sword technique was powerful, she could not break through Lu Yin's domain. However, Lu Yin had not expected that his domain would actually start to freeze. The woman's ice had an unfathomable power that could even freeze a domain. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold and his domain erupted, shattering the ice. The woman held her sword and stared at Lu Yin coldly, but then her expression turned to one of shock. It's you. Lu Yin stared at her, and the more he looked at her, the more familiar she seemed. At first he had thought that she was Bai Shui. Their appearances were too similar, but there were also some differences. Although Bai Shui was cold, she had a gentle beauty to her. Suddenly Lu Yin thought of someone. You're Bai Qian. The woman sheathed her sword, her gaze cold. Why are you here? Are you really Bai Qian? Bai Shui's sister? Lu Yin was stunned. The other woman spoke up and looked at Bai Qian. You know her? Bai Qian indifferently replied, I've seen her before but I don't know her. Lu Yin was stunned. It really was Bai Qian. She was a legendary woman who had been the first to reach Neptune on Earth. She was also the one who had discovered Night King Qingyu and brought him to Earth. If not for her, Earth would not have experienced the crisis of Armageddon. It could be said that this woman had changed many people's lives. Lu Yin still remembered Bai Shui mentioning that her sister, Bai Qian, had a face that could make the rainbow pale in comparison. She was also a woman who had a mind of her own. This woman should have left at the beginning of Earth's apocalypse with Starsabil's invitation. It was said that she had already reached the Sentinel realm at the time and was ahead of everyone else. Lu Yin had already forgotten about this woman and assumed that she had been obliterated in the universe. He had not expected to meet her here. This was the glory boundary of the Neoverse universe, the Starlink realm. How could she have made it here? Why are you here? Lu Yin asked again. He was too curious about this woman's experiences. Bai Qian stared at him coldly. That's not a reason for you to peep. Lu Yin felt awkward. Unintentionally. You have a domain, so how is that unintentional? The woman beside Bai Qian looked at Lu Yin curiously. Her tone was questioning, but her gaze was not as sharp as Bai Qian's. Instead, it was filled with curiosity and an indescribable meaning. Lu Yin explained, domains can't be used carelessly. It's very rude. So peeping isn't rude? She smiled faintly. Lu Yin pursed his lips. Why are you here? Bai Qian asked coldly as she stared at him. I was captured by the Neo-Human Alliance, but I escaped and was put on trial by the Inquisitor. Now that I'm free, I want to contact the Outerverse through Starlink Corporation. Bai Qian remained calm and did not ask any more questions. Lu Yin, right? I know you, the woman beside Bai Qian said. Lu Yin looked at her curiously. And you are? She smiled. Zijing. You have to remember this name. What? Lu Yin was stunned. She raised her brows. So that you'll know who you've seen naked. If I can't get married in the future, I'll look for you. Lu Yin laughed dryly. This was not the first time he had experienced something like this. He had fallen into Ming Yan's bathtub and used his domain to look at Wendy, but she had warned him not to use his domain to look at others. He had never thought that something like this would happen again, and he did not know what kind of luck he had. However, he blinked. He had indeed seen her clearly, and she had been very beautiful. No, the more he thought about it, the more unbearable he felt. He quickly changed the topic and looked at Bai Qian. Why are you here? There hasn't been any news of you for so many years, and Bai Shui thought that you were dead. A complicated expression flashed across Bai Qian's face at the mention of Bai Shui, but it quickly disappeared. Is she doing well? Lu Yin shook his head. Not good. She was first controlled by someone else and then she disappeared. No one knows where she went. Where did she disappear? Bai Qian was puzzled. Lu Yin glanced at Zijing, but he did not say anything. Zijing smiled. Looks like there's a secret. You guys can chat. She then seemed to recall something and looked at Lu Yin. I can read fortunes. Lu Yin was confused. What do you mean? The first thing he thought of was the Starsibyl sect. Zijing smiled. I can tell that you'll have something to ask of me very soon. Lu Yin was stunned. She smiled and left. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he looked at Bai Qian. What's her relationship with Starlink Network? Bai Qian indifferently replied, Boss. Boss? Her? Lu Yin exclaimed. Bai Qian frowned. Where did Bai Shui go missing? Lu Yin casually replied, Jupiter. He then looked in the direction that Zijing had left. She had gone to the tower. Was this woman the boss of Starlink Network? No way, she was so young. How could she have built such a massive organization that even the Hall of Honor could monitor? Perhaps she was not young, but she had maintained her youthful appearance. There were many such people in the universe. Bai Qian stared at Lu Yin. Jupiter? She went to Jupiter? Lu Yin nodded. She was sucked in with Zhang Dingtian. I wanted to go in and bring them out, but I couldn't. Bai Qian fell into deep thought. Lu Yin temporarily set aside his suspicions about Zijing's identity and looked at Bai Qian. Where have you been all these years? You only left because of Starsibyl's invitation. Bai Qian indifferently replied, I went to the Astral Combat Academy. Lu Yin was shocked. Astral Combat Academy? Which academy? Astral One. Bai Qian indifferently replied. Lu Yin was puzzled. Why haven't I seen you before? Poor results, weak strength, and annihilated everyone, Bai Qian indifferently said before descending. I'm going to continue soaking in the hot springs. Do you want to watch? Thanks to my brothers for your support. I'm not going to update much, so I'll try my best to update a few more days. Thanks, brothers. Chapter 1185. Lu Yin was helpless. He had many questions to ask Bai Qian, but the one he wanted to know the most was how she had become a cruiser. He had his innate gift of the dye, his time-stop space, and various other methods to speed up his cultivation. He had even used death energy to replace star energy, which had allowed him to become a hunter in a short 12 years. But what about Bai Qian? She was also a normal person, but she had become a cruiser in such a short time. It was somewhat inconceivable since her realm was not any lower than Ku Wei's. Ku Wei had come from the Seven Courts, so what did Bai Qian have? This woman had secrets. Lu Yin wanted to ask, but since she did not want to talk about it, he could not force her. Still, he was quite happy to meet a fellow Earthling here. Go back to Earth when you have the time. Maybe you can bring Bai Shui and the others back from Jupiter, Lu Yin said before heading towards the tower. Below, in the hot spring, Bai Qian looked up at Lu Yin's departing figure and fell into deep thought. If Lu Yin was surprised by her increase in power, then she was shocked by Lu Yin's increase in power. She knew that with her own innate gift and destiny, it was normal for her to become a cruiser. Even though it seemed inconceivable to outsiders, she herself felt that it was a little slow. But what about Lu Yin? How had he improved so quickly? Furthermore, the pressure that Lu Yin had exerted on her during that brief exchange was far greater than any of her peers that she had ever faced. From the Astral Combat Tournament to the decisive battle with the Sixth Mainland in the Cosmic Sea, and now Lu Yin's improvement was unimaginable. His innate gift and destiny even surpassed hers. With complicated thoughts, Bai Qian sank into the hot spring. As for Bai Shui and Zhang Dingtian, since they had already gone there, they would walk on a different path. One day they would return, and it was also possible that they would be waiting for them on the other side. Earth would be discovered one day. Lu Yin was too high profile, and the more high profile he was, the faster the calamity would befall Earth. She needed to increase her power as soon as possible. Starlink Network's headquarters was a tall tower that towered into the heavens. From a distance, the tower did not seem very large, but that was because it was too far away. It was so far away that Lu Yin had expected it to be. Only when he got closer could he truly understand how large the tower was. It was not an exaggeration to say that this tower could hold billions or even 10 billion people without being crowded. It could also hold countless technological products. Through this tower, one could connect to the Outerverse from the Neoverse. It had been some time since Lu Yin had left the Outerverse, and the Hall of Honor's decision had made him rather anxious. He needed to regain control of the Outerverse as soon as possible. There were no obstructions to entering the tower, but Lu Yin found it strange that this place was so open. The first level was very wide and one couldn't see the end of it. From afar it looked like a tall tower, but from close up, it looked like it was made up of many pieces of land. This was the Starlink Network company that Lu Yin remembered. The most advanced technology was everywhere, and people moved around the screens, disappearing and reappearing in the blink of an eye. Everyone had their own matters to attend to. Suddenly, a mechanical voice sounded in Lu Yin's ears. "Mr. Lu, please ascend." Just as Lu Yin was feeling puzzled, a beam of light descended from the sky and enveloped him, causing his body to float up uncontrollably. The binding force of this light beam was not strong. He could easily break free, but there was no need for that. His speed grew faster and faster as he flew higher and higher. It was as if he was flying through space and he could see the entire landscape of the mountains and rivers. Soon he arrived at the top of the tower. This was not an office but a garden. Lu Yin stepped into the garden and heard a familiar singing voice from afar. His heart skipped a beat and he looked over. It was Zijing. Zijing looked up and smiled when she saw Lu Yin. "Look, I told you I could read fortunes." Lu Yin laughed as he walked around the garden. There were all sorts of strange flowers and plants here that he did not recognize, but they were all very beautiful. Zijing walked amongst the flowers like a gardener, occasionally watering them. He seemed to be very happy. "Are you the boss of Starlink?" he asked. Zijing nodded and looked at him. "Why? You don't look like it." "You don't look like it at all," Lu Yin said, but then he realized that he was being a little rude. "You're too young and too beautiful." "Ah, Lu Yin, you always coax girls like this. You're so sweet." Zijing smiled. Lu Yin smiled. "Tell me, how can I contact the Outerverse? I told you I could read fortunes and now you're begging me." Zijing smiled happily. Lu Yin knew that women could not be offended. He could contact Mu En and have Zijing agree to let him contact the Outerverse, but doing so would offend this woman. She was not a subordinate of the Hall of Honor and was merely under supervision. Besides, she had developed a network that connected the entire universe, and he would definitely need her help in the future. It was not worth it to offend her over such a small matter. "All right, what do you want?" Lu Yin asked helplessly. Zijing put down the kettle and took out a hat from somewhere. She then gestured for Lu Yin to take a seat. There was a wooden table nearby and Lu Yin sat down. Zijing poured him a cup of tea. "Try it. It's flower tea brewed with these flowers." Lu Yin raised a brow. "Flower tea? Wasn't that what Zhou Ran liked to do?" He took a sip and felt that something was off. It tasted similar to the tea brewed by Zhou Ran. Zijing looked at him. "How's the taste?" Lu Yin nodded and praised, "It's delicious and beautiful." Although the taste was similar to the tea brewed by Zhou Ran, the appearance was completely different. Zhou Ran's flower tea was like poison, and no one dared to drink it unless they had some courage. It was not like this tea, which looked delicious. Zijing smiled. "Thank you." Lu Yin asked, "How can Boss Zijing allow me to contact the Outerverse?" Zijing smiled. "I'm not stopping you." Lu Yin was taken aback. That seemed to be the case since she had not stopped him. "So you're saying that I can contact the Outerverse?" Lu Yin asked. Zijing smiled. "I can stop you right now." Lu Yin was speechless. "What's the request? Tell me." Zijing put down her teacup. "Does Alliance Master Lu allow others to make requests so easily?" "That depends on who the other party is." Zijing smiled. "The Hall of Honor has given the authority to oversee the Great Eastern Alliance to one of the 9 directors, the Old Man. The Old Man has also sent his grandson to the Outerverse. Is Alliance Master Lu worried that his grandson, young Master Tian, will be able to take control of the Great Eastern Alliance? Lu Yin fell silent. Zijing continued. Does Alliance Master Lu have so little confidence in the Great Eastern Alliance that you've single-handedly created? Lu Yin looked at her. What are you trying to say? Zijing replied. Young Master Tian has used the excuse that the Outerverse is about to be gifted to the Sixth Mainland to convene a meeting of the Great Eastern Alliance with the intention of electing a new Alliance Master. Does Alliance Master Lu know about this? Lu Yin's eyes flashed. I know now. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Thank you. Chapter 1186. Then Alliance Head Lu will have to hurry. The Alliance Conference is currently being held, and it's almost time for the voting. Back when Alliance Head Lu was elected, although he didn't say how long it would take to elect a new Alliance Head, 6 years have passed in the blink of an eye. If young Master Tian elects a new Alliance Head now, no one will say anything, said Zijing. Lu Yin asked, then can I contact the Outerverse? Zijing took a sip of tea. It's ready. She then clapped her hands and a girl arrived at the top floor through a beam of light and handed him a gadget. Alliance Master Lu, you can discard your gadget. This is a newly developed gadget, and through a specific signal, it can connect to the Innerverse and Outerverse, the Neoverse and the Cosmic Sea. There are less than 50 people in the entire human domain who have this gadget, Zijing said. Why are you giving me this? Zijing's expression changed and she looked at Lu Yin seriously. Alliance Leader Lu, do you still remember what you promised Enya? Lu Yin suddenly had an idea. You want me to save Commander Shui Chuanxiao? Zijing said in a low voice. Commander Shui intentionally caused Endless Weave to lose the war. In terms of war, he's a sinner, but he's also used this to connect the entire human domain's network, allowing the human domain's information to be transmitted in a timely manner. This is a great contribution, and Alliance Master Lu should deeply understand the importance of timely information transmission. Otherwise, Alliance Master Lu would only be able to watch as the Great Eastern Alliance is taken away from him. This woman hadn't intended to make things difficult for him from the very beginning. She just wanted him to experience the importance of timely internet transmissions, thus raising Shui Chuanxiao's importance to the development of the human race. She'd really put a lot of thought into this. I'm afraid that's not all. Back then, you were the one who found Commander Shui and asked him to find a way to connect to the entire human network. What was your goal? Just for the development of mankind? If that's the case, you can look for the Hall of Honor or even spread this idea through your network. Also, what makes you think Shui Chuanxiao can help you? Lu Yin couldn't help but ask. Zijing smiled. I can answer that, but do you think now is the right time? Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat. That's right, there's no time. He immediately contacted Wang Wen. At the same time in the Outerverse where young Master Tian had appeared in the Outerverse, an alliance conference was being held on an ordinary planet not too far away. The representatives of the hundreds of Outerverse powers, both large and small, were engaged in a heated discussion. Some of them were the ruling powers of their respective weaves, while others were the powers that had been given control over their own weaves. The news that young Master Tian had released had shaken the entire Outerverse, and this had attracted everyone to convene an alliance conference. The conference proceeded smoothly and just as Zijing had said, it was almost time for the voting. This was because young Master Tian had promised that he would help the Outerverse fight for its rights and interests, and that he would not just allow the Sixth Mainland to completely take over the Outerverse. This was the main topic of discussion among the various great powers in the Outerverse. No one was willing to leave the Outerverse and hand over their territory to someone else. We can't compromise. Back when the Sixth Mainland attacked the Outerverse, we didn't even lose, so how can we give up so easily? Our ancestors have been living and thriving in the Outerverse for generations, so there's no reason for our generation to stop. That might be the case, but it was the Hall of Honor that fought against the Sixth Mainland. They had an absolute powerhouse like Master Yuan as well as many hidden experts. Even so, they still suffered heavy casualties. Now that the Hall of Honor has given up on the Outerverse, what right do we have to stop them? Forget it. Things are still fine in the East. Even if the Sixth Mainland wants to take over, it will still take a long time. What about the Western Weaves? Didn't young Master Tian say that he would help us? He's the grandson of one of the 9 directors, the Unaging Elder. Furthermore, the Unaging Elder is currently in charge of the Great Eastern Alliance. As long as the Alliance can bring him great benefits, There's no reason for him to give up on us. That's right. Since the 9 directors have spoken, we won't be given up so easily. There's still a chance for things to turn around, and it all depends on what young Master Tian does. The vast Earth sect master Meng Tianlong listened to the discussions and occasionally glanced at the silent Wei Rong. This youth was truly unfathomable. Since the start of the Alliance Conference, Wei Rong had not spoken at all. Even when young Master Tian had forced him to express his stance, Wei Rong had only said a few polite words before changing the topic. Meng Tianlong definitely did not believe that Wei Rong was loyal to Lu Yin, but Wei Rong had not expressed his loyalty to young Master Tian. As a smart person, Meng Tianlong knew that such an attitude would not please either side, as it would not be a wise move. Gong Chou from the Taimo Palace also glanced at Wei Rong as he listened to the discussions. When he heard that these people had placed their hopes on young Master Tian, a mocking look appeared in his eyes. The Outerverse did not know much about the Neoverse, and their understanding of the Hall of Honor was even more shallow. Since the news of the 6th mainland taking over the Outerverse was true, how could a mere director be able to salvage the situation? Even if all 9 directors acted together, it would still be useless. In the end, the directors were just a layer of face that the Hall of Honor presented to the outside world. The ones who could truly make decisions were not the directors. Perhaps the 9 directors did not even know why the Outerverse was being handed over to the 6th mainland. Young Master Tian was just using this as a pretense to force everyone to accept his supervision. Even though he knew this, Gong Chou did not intend to expose young Master Tian. If the Outerverse was truly being handed over to the 6th mainland, then the Taimo Palace would have to think of a way to survive. Under such circumstances, it was not worth offending young Master Tian. He glanced at Wei Rong again. What was he thinking? He couldn't be waiting for Lu Yin, right? Lu Yin had been captured by the Neo-Human Alliance, and it was impossible for him to return. What a pity. Doro propped her chin up with one hand and watched the discussions without saying anything. Bard Weave was located in the Eastern Weaves and was very far away from the 6th mainland. Even if the 6th mainland wanted to take over, it would take a very long time. In truth, although the elders of Evenground Palace were as anxious as fleas, she was not in a hurry. At worst, she would just go to the Innerverse. After all, she had no plans to become the palace master of Evenground Palace. As for her master, he was probably even happier. He might even be thinking of ways to contact Lan Si. Anji, Xianxia, Zhou Xian, Xianxia, Zifeng, and the people from the Nalan family were all present at the Alliance Conference. Only the Lan family and the Sea King's Dome were not present. The Outerverse did not only include the Weave's powers, but also the 4 major corporations. It could be said that this Alliance Conference was the true Great Eastern Alliance's Alliance Conference, and it was much larger and more formal than the first one that Lu Yin had held. This was the effect that young Master Tian wanted. He was the true leader of the Great Eastern Alliance, and he would leave a mark in history. As for Lu Yin, even if he did not die, he would become a zombie. History would not give him a high evaluation, and at most it would be fair. Young Master Tian's lips curled up as he watched the discussions. The more intense the discussions, the better. The more intense the discussions, the more despair they would feel, and the easier it would be for him to succeed. Young Master Tian's gaze swept across everyone, and then he looked at Wei Rong with a cold gaze. Wei Rong had followed him after being defeated by Lu Yin, and he was very smart. Young Master Tian had seen Wei Rong's resume and wanted to recruit him for his own use, but he had not expected Wei Rong to fail to appreciate his kindness and ignore him. Young Master Tian then looked at Gong Chou, Lu Phineas of the Dark Phoenix clan, Xianxia, and Xianxia. These people did not know how to appreciate his kindness, and they all ignored him. They were a bunch of idiots who had not seen the world. But that was fine, and there was no rush. He would let these people understand the Neoverse and the Hall of Honor. Right, there was also the group of people who had escaped from the Starfall Sea to the Outerverse, and they were just as troublesome as Leon's armada. The Outerverse currently had Master Yuan, the group from the Starfall Sea, and Leon's armada, so young Master Tian did not dare to be too impudent. However, that might not be the case in the future. As he looked at Xianxia and Xianxian's beautiful faces, young Master Tian's gaze burned with passion, but he concealed it very well. This was the first time in his life that he was serious about something, and he could not afford to make any mistakes. For this reason, he had already concealed his true nature very well, but he still had to continue. Disguising himself was a compulsory course for him. Cough cough. Everyone, how did the discussion go? Young Master Tian smiled as he looked at the crowd. Wei Rong glanced at him with a faint smile. His eyes were empty as if this person did not exist. He recalled Wang Wen's words. Wait, continue to wait. Wait until the final moment. Our value will not disappear with the passage of time. If Lu Yin really dies or becomes a zombie, then that is fate. Rather than assisting a piece of trash, it is better to live in seclusion. Wei Rong did not agree with Wang Wen's thoughts. Live in seclusion? He was still young and he did not have the mentality of an old man. However, he agreed with Lu Yin on one point, which was to wait and continue to wait. After fighting with Lu Yin for so long, Wei Rong understood this person better than anyone else. A person's destiny was very important, and the chances of escaping after being captured by the Neo-Human Alliance were less than 1 in a billion. Wei Rong did not hold out much hope, but no one knew what the final outcome would be. There was no loss in waiting, and he was confident that his value would not disappear with the passage of time. Those who truly had authority in the Outerverse were all waiting. They were not waiting for Lu Yin, but rather for the Hall of Honor's decision. As for Lu Yin, no one held much hope for him. Besides, no one was willing to be oppressed by a ruler. Lu Yin's presence or absence did not make much of a difference to most people. In fact, most people hoped that Lu Yin would disappear and never appear again. Green Peak Gorge was the most obvious example of this. Out of the various great powers, they had been the first to express their attitude towards young Master Tian, which had allowed them to sit in a position that was second only to young Master Tian. They looked down on everyone else, and when they looked at Wei Rong, their gazes were filled with intense hostility. Green Peak Gorge had always been fearful of the Great Eastern Alliance, and they had always acted cautiously. They had only been able to sit there because they had replaced Darkstar Gorge. Darkstar Gorge's fate had caused Green Peak Gorge to not dare to show any disrespect to the Great Eastern Alliance and Lu Yin. The more they feared someone, the more arrogant they would be when that person disappeared. Young Master Tian, we have already discussed this. Only the Hall of Honor and the old man can lead us out of the Sixth Mainland's control. We hope that young Master Tian can show us the way. Green Peak Gorge's master Feng Shu said respectfully to young Master Tian. Young Master Tian nodded in satisfaction and looked at Feng Shu with admiration. He then looked at everyone else. What does everyone think? Everyone looked at each other and some agreed while others did not. Feng Shu looked at Wei Rong. Brother Wei, what does the Great Yu Empire think? He had specifically mentioned the Great Yu Empire and his meaning was clear. In the future, there would only be the Great Yu Empire in the Outerverse, and there would be no leader of the Great Eastern Alliance. Chapter 1187. Feng Shu's words caused everyone to look at Wei Rong. One was the old master of the Great Eastern Alliance while the other was the new master. If Wei Rong gave a bad answer, he would be in for a lot of trouble. Wei Rong continued to smile. There's a strange place in the Outerverse called the Carnivorous Forest. It's not a simple place and there are many delicious creatures that live there. These creatures all wander around the forest like fish swimming in water. The forest is like a river and these creatures don't have legs so they can only swim. For some reason these creatures are especially delicious. Wei Rong spoke a lot and everyone was stunned. Xianxia smiled faintly. Gong Cho had a strange look in his eyes. Xianxia rolled her eyes. Feng Shu raised an eyebrow. Brother Wei, I'm asking you a question. Don't change the subject. Wei Rong sighed. Young Master Tian stared at him with a solemn expression. Everyone else became serious. Were they going to answer? It's a pity that the edible forest is too far away from the eastern region. I can't eat it. What a pity. According to the book. Everyone was speechless. He couldn't eat it, yet he said it as if it was true. Feng Shu still wanted to say something but young Master Tian stopped him. Enough. Brother Wei wants to have a meal in the food forest. I'll bring you there when I have the time. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Feng Shu stared at Gong Cho. Brother Gong Cho, the Temple of Taiyamo is one of the 3 strongest powers in the Outerverse, and it has the right to speak. What does the Temple of Taiyamo think? Young Master Tian stared at Gong Cho. He had heard of the Temple of Taiyamo before, and there weren't many powers in the Outerverse that he had heard of. The Temple of Taiyamo was definitely one of them and it had an emissary overseeing it. Although there were no more emissaries in the Outerverse, the Temple of Taiyamo had contributed greatly during the Border War. Even young Master Tian could not afford to offend the temple of Taimo, otherwise he would be judged internally by the Hall of Honor. The Hall of Honor valued those who had performed meritorious deeds greatly. For example, in the Great Yu Empire, even the unaging elder could not be touched because of Lu Yin's meritorious deeds, even without the support of Master Yuan and those from Everlasting Sky Island. It was precisely because of this that the Hall of Honor was able to firmly control the human domain. Rewards and punishments were clear. This was the Hall of Honor. Gong Chao's expression was solemn as he seriously looked at Wei Rong. Is it really that delicious? Everyone was dumbfounded. Wei Rong seriously replied, it's delicious. It's worthy of the name Eating Forest. Which book did you read that from? Can I take a look at it? My father is also very interested in it, Gong Chou said solemnly, as if they were working together to resist the Sixth Mainland. Wei Rong's reply was even more serious. Yes. Feng Shu's brows twitched. Young Master Tian's face darkened. Feng Shu snorted and stared at Xianxia. He didn't believe that this woman would be so daring. Miss Xianxia Myriad City. Before Feng Shu could finish speaking, Xianxia interrupted him. She was very serious, and her expression was frighteningly serious as she stared at Wei Rong. Myriad City would also like to take a look. Wei Rong looked at Xianxia. No problem. Let's team up and have a meal at the food forest, Phineas said. Wei Rong nodded. All right, I'll organize it. The food forest is a delicacy of the Outerverse. Bring me along. Meng Tianlong smiled. Xianxia also raised her hand. I want to go. Bring me along. Fang hurriedly tugged at Xianxia. He saw that young Master Tian's face had turned completely black. It was so black that he couldn't see anyone. He looked like he was about to explode. Feng Shu was a little confused, and his mind kept replaying the words food forest, and so on. These people had such serious expressions, and Wei Rong and Xianxia were said to be the smartest people in the Outerverse. Even the Temple of Taimo and the Dark Phoenix clan had gotten involved. Could this so-called food forest be hiding some huge secret? In that instant, all sorts of strange treasures from the Outerverse flashed through his mind. He then moved closer to young Master Tian's ear. Young Master Tian, let's go to the food forest as well. Frem. Young Master Tian barked as he glared at Feng Shu. He felt like this guy was deliberately trying to disgust him. Bastard, you can't be a spy, right? Just you wait, I'll make you wish you were dead. Feng Shu was dumbfounded. The Alliance Conference had been led astray by Wei Rong, and everyone was now thinking about the food forest. Some people even used their gadgets to search for it, and some even announced its location. Young Master Tian gritted his teeth and slammed his hand on the table. The loud sound shook everyone, and they all looked at him. Everyone, let's put the food aside for now. The Sixth Mainland is about to take over the Outerverse, so let's discuss this matter first, young Master Tian said, his cold gaze sweeping across the crowd. That's right. Let's discuss the Sixth Mainland first, Feng Shu hurriedly added. Young Master Tian no longer trusted him, and he felt like this guy was doing this on purpose. At this point, Xianxia and the others fell silent once more. The others wanted to speak up, but since the Outerverse's true powerhouses were not speaking, there was no point in them speaking up. Young Master Tian felt his patience rapidly vanishing, and his hands gradually clenched into fists. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Wei Rong. Now everyone, make your stance clear. Do you agree to my grandfather, the Eternal Elder, overseeing the Outerverse? If you don't agree, then please state your stance. He then looked at Feng Shu. You're the first. You're the first to speak. Of course I support it. I absolutely support Director Eternal Elder overseeing the Great Eastern Alliance. Young Master Tian snorted and looked at the person seated below him. It was Bok Shamus of the Six-Fingered Tribe. Bok Shamus's eyes flashed and he nodded. I agree. Following that, more than 10 people agreed in succession. The Outerverse was too weak compared to the Neoverse, and young Master Tian's promise left them with no choice but to believe that they had been led astray by Wei Rong. Now young Master Tian's authority had brought them back on the right track. I agree, a man answered. Then everyone looked at the person seated below him where Wei Rong was. Young Master Tian looked over with a sharp gaze, and he no longer concealed his sharpness. He felt that these people were despicable and they did not know fear unless they were pressured. In any case, as long as they did not attack Master Yuan, and Everlasting Sky Island would not be able to do anything about it. Young Master Tian was running out of patience, as he had never been so annoyed in his entire life. Wei Rong faced everyone's gazes and raised his head. Who else wants to sign up for the food forest? Brother Wei Rong, please answer. Young Master Tian's tone was cold. Behind him, the elder who had been protecting Wei Rong looked up, and a terrifying pressure suddenly descended. On the other side, eccentric Qi was gloating. What a bunch of idiots. How can you resist the Neoverse's powerful disciples? Although Wei Rong was not weak, he was not strong either. When faced with the elder's pressure, beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. In the distance, Angie of the Umbral Butterfly tribe had a cold expression. She still had not forgiven Wei Rong. Wei Rong panted heavily and looked at young Master Tian. I'm sorry, young Master Tian. When he said that, the elder's pressure disappeared and young Master Tian relaxed. This person was not too stupid, and young Master Tian was about to give in. Everyone looked at Wei Rong. Angie looked at him with disdain. There's one more person who wants to sign up for the food forest. That's him. He then tapped his gadget, causing an image to appear in front of everyone, and a faint voice sounded. Everyone, long time no see. There were more than 100 people present, and they represented the entire Outerverse. At this moment, everyone was staring at the image in a daze, unable to believe their eyes. Luyin, Xianxia, Gongqiu, Lu Finyas, Xianxia, Angie, Meng Tianlong, and the others. Everyone who had interacted with Lu Yin before was shocked. He had actually returned. Although the rest had not interacted with Lu Yin before, Lu Yin's appearance had been deeply ingrained in their hearts, and they would never forget him even if they died. At this moment, when they saw Lu Yin, it was as if they had seen a ghost. The entire scene fell silent for a full half a minute. Wei Rong's lips curled up, and he looked at young Master Tian as if he was looking at a clown. Waiting was indeed meaningful, as Lu Yin's opportunities were truly unimaginable. Even though he did not understand the Neo-Human Alliance as an organization that had stubbornly resisted the human domain for countless years, its foundation was unimaginable. Since Lu Yin had been able to walk out of such a desperate situation, Wei Rong believed that nothing would be too difficult for this person in the future. At this moment, Wei Rong was convinced. No, he had been convinced the moment Lu Yin had contacted him. Young Master Tian was in disbelief. Since he had come to the Outerverse, he naturally needed to know the history of the Outerverse. The most recent history of the Outerverse was that it had been unified, and he had naturally seen Lu Yin's appearance before. Impossible. How did you escape? This question was in everyone's mind. Even the old man behind young Master Tian, who had been as calm as an ancient well, was shocked. Even Freak Qi felt as if he had seen a ghost. Lu Yin looked at young Master Tian and smiled. You're the undying old man's grandson? Young Master Tian clenched his fists and stared at Lu Yin. Fake, you're a fake. He then glared at Wei Rong. You have some guts to openly defy the Hall of Honor's orders and even impersonate Lu Yin. Do you want to die? The others also looked at Wei Rong with puzzled expressions. Wei Rong shrugged and did not say anything. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. Young Master Tian, where are we? He then made way for young Master Tian. Young Master Tian stared at Lu Yin again and again. He had originally been a little confused, as even though he was from the Hall of Honor, it was impossible for him to have seen every place. However, when he saw Zijing drinking tea at the table, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Zijing? The Astral Alliance realm? Behind Lu Yin, Zijing raised a hand and smiled. Long time no see, young Master Tian. Say hello to the undying old man for me. Young Master Tian's eyes widened, and he finally believed that Lu Yin was telling the truth. The Astral Alliance plane and Zijing could not be faked, and not everyone knew who Zijing was. That woman rarely appeared in the Hall of Honor, so how could someone from the Outerverse know her? This couldn't be fake. Young Master Tian looked at Lu Yin in shock. How did you escape from the Neo-Human Alliance? Lu Yin smiled. You don't have to worry about that. The head judge has already determined that I, Lu Yin, am free. Young Master Tian's scalp went numb and he was at a loss. Lu Yin had returned, but he did not know what to do. Lu Yin's appearance had caught him off guard, and he had no experience dealing with such matters. If it had been the undying old man, he definitely would not have panicked, but young Master Tian was different. He was just a hedonistic son, and that was all. Young Master Tian fell silent and stared blankly at Lu Yin. Lu Yin looked at him with disdain. He had never cared about this young Master Tian, but the undying old man was the one he needed to pay attention to. The Hall of Honor had only allowed the undying old man to oversee the Great Eastern Alliance, and it had nothing to do with this young Master Tian. He was just a clown. Behind young Master Tian, the old man whispered something to him. Young Master Tian seemed to wake up from a dream, and he looked at Lu Yin before looking at everyone else. Everyone, I would like to congratulate Brother Lu Yin on his safe return. Everyone looked at him as he continued. Secondly, since Brother Lu Yin is here, then please represent the Great Yu Empire in this alliance conference. Let's continue our previous discussion. He then looked at Wei Rong. Brother Wei Rong, do you agree to my grandfather, the undying old man, being the director of the Great Eastern Alliance? I'll continue to update in the afternoon, and I'll try my best to keep this up to date for a few more days. Thank you, brothers. Chapter 1188. No one spoke and they all looked at Lu Yin. Wei Rong did not speak either, as there was no need for him to speak at this moment. Lu Yin looked at young Master Tian in astonishment, and then he looked at the elder behind young Master Tian and laughed. You're young Master Tian, right? Young Master Tian looked at Lu Yin. That's right. My grandfather is one of the 9 directors of the Hall of Honor. The unaging old man, Lu Yin nodded. I know, I've heard of him. Young Master Tian was proud. Lu Yin looked at him and smiled. Do you want to die? Those 3 words caused the scene to fall silent once more. Everyone stared at Lu Yin in shock. What? Even Wei Rong had not expected Lu Yin to be so domineering. He had actually dared to threaten the grandson of one of the 9 directors. This was too arrogant. Young Master Tian was stunned, as he had always said this to others. When had anyone ever threatened him like this before? He did not even know how to respond. Behind young Master Tian, the elder's expression changed, and he took a few steps forward to look at Lu Yin. His eyes were filled with vigilance and killing intent. Old Chi's mouth twitched and he stared at Lu Yin in shock. How bold. If you want to die, I can fulfill your wish, Lu Yin continued, still smiling. It was as if he was not threatening the grandson of one of the 9 directors, but rather an ordinary person who could not be any more ordinary. Young Master Tian had used the excuse of helping the Outerverse break free from the 6th mainland to call for an alliance conference, and he had also requested that everyone accept the unaging old man's supervision. Lu Yin had not been in the Great Eastern Alliance for long, and he did not have enough prestige to make everyone give up everything to follow him. He was not that narcissistic, so he did not plan to compete with young Master Tian in terms of charm or conditions. He wanted to deal with the problem directly from the root. Furthermore, he wanted to use this matter to let everyone know that no one else could touch the Outerverse. Not just the Outerverse, but everything that belonged to Lu Yin could not be touched by anyone else. Young Master Tian finally reacted and he laughed in anger. He looked at Lu Yin with indescribable ridicule and arrogance. You're threatening me? Are you threatening me, young Master Tian? Lu Yin smiled. Your smile is similar to Night King Zhenwu's, but he's much smarter and stronger than you. Young Master Tian's face sank. Don't compare me to some trash from the Innerverse. Lu Yin was astonished. Who gave you the confidence to think that you can surpass the 10 arbiters? Even though I hate Night King Zhenwu, I have to admit that he's one of the most powerful enemies of my generation. You, on the other hand, don't qualify. Lu Yin, don't be arrogant. You're just an ant from the Outerverse, so how can you compare yourself to me? What right do you have to threaten me? The young master was furious and he glared at Lu Yin. Do you believe that I can destroy the entire Great Yu Empire with a single word? Everyone you care about will die. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. Is this old man's idea? Young Master Tian still wanted to say something, but he was pulled back by the old man behind him who kept whispering to him. Young Master Tian was unwilling, but he could only nod helplessly. Everyone looked at Lu Yin and then at young Master Tian with complicated feelings. On one hand, they were afraid of Lu Yin's methods, but on the other, they hoped that young Master Tian would keep his promise. They wanted to help young Master Tian, but they were also afraid of Lu Yin. This was especially true for Feng Shu, who had already sided with young Master Tian. He had stuck his head out too much, and at this moment he only wanted to stuff his head into the ground. Since Lu Yin dared to threaten young Master Tian, it proved that he had the ability to back up his words and no one dared to interrupt. Wei Rong was speechless. Lu Yin was becoming more and more overbearing, which meant that he was becoming more and more upright. Wei Rong thought back to the time he had spent in the Outerverse with Leon's armada, as well as the vague rumors about the power behind Leon's armada. Wei Rong believed that Lu Yin would do as he said. Lu Yin did not care about young Master Tian at all. So what if young Master Tian was one of the 9 council members? Heizij Wudi's words had convinced Lu Yin that the 9 council members did not have as much authority as they seemed. He had even dared to rebuke the presiding judge, so why would he be afraid of someone like the 9 council members, whose positions could be changed at any time? Besides, he had already offended one of the 9 council members, which was Night King Zheng of the Day-Night clan. He did not care about adding another old man to the mix. Lu Yin hoped that there would be as few enemies as possible, but he would not compromise just because of this. Young Master Tian looked at Lu Yin unwillingly, and then he activated his gadget to contact someone. Lu Yin looked at young Master Tian's gadget, which was exactly the same as his own. It was the latest model and could connect to the Innerverse and Outerverse, the Cosmic Sea and the Neoverse. The person that young Master Tian was contacting was most likely the old man. Lu Yin's expression turned solemn as he was about to meet the old man face to face. Even though he had dared to offend the 9 council members, it would still be a little complicated if they actually met face to face. Behind Lu Yin, Zijing beamed at him. He was a very domineering man even though he was a little skinny. Young Master Tian did not avoid the Outerverse participants of the Alliance Conference and directly contacted the old man. Soon the old man's image appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was filled with respect, and even Wei Rong and the others who did not care about young Master Tian had solemn expressions. The old man and young Master Tian represented different things. The 9 council members of the Hall of Honor were existences that even the experts of the Innerverse 8 Great Flow Zones might not be able to meet. They were existences that stood at the pinnacle of the human domain, and a single word from them could determine the rise and fall of a weave. Even though Lu Yin had unified the Outerverse and everyone was fearful of his methods, compared to the old man, even though this old man was all smiles, he still caused everyone to feel a chill in their hearts. This was an old man with true authority. Along with authority came power, and the old man behind young Master Tian was the power that the old man had recruited. The old man was an ordinary-looking old man who was dressed in plain clothes. If they had met him on the streets, no one would have spared him a second glance. But now, everyone was staring at him, not knowing what would happen next. Grandfather, young Master Tian bowed respectfully. The old man behind young Master Tian bowed as well with a respectful expression. Freak Chi stared at the old man, and when he saw the old man looking over, he hurriedly bowed. At the same time, everyone participating in the Alliance Conference bowed as well. Even Wei Rong, Gong Cho and the others bowed, as this was a sign of respect for the 9 council members. Most people in the Outerverse did not know about the Neoverse, let alone the 9 council members who stood at the pinnacle of the human domain. When facing such people, everyone would subconsciously bow. The old man had a smile on his face as he was already used to everyone bowing to him. Only one person looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin did not bow and he merely raised a hand in greeting. "Greetings, senior old man. How dare you?" The old man behind young Master Tian barked as he glared at Lu Yin. "How dare you speak to a council member in such a manner? Junior, you don't know any manners." Lu Yin did not care about the old man at all. The old man also raised a hand. "That's enough. He's just a child, so be more tolerant." The old man immediately lowered his head, not daring to say another word. When they saw this scene, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. That old man was an enlighter with a power level of at least 400,000, and such a person would be considered an elder in the Innerverse. Yet he was actually bowing to the old man. This old man's methods and boldness could be imagined. Follow Wind, please do your best to update for a few more days. Thank you brothers for your support. Thank you. Chapter 1189. Being a director wasn't just for show. With such a position, the amount of resources one could control was unimaginable. Lu Yin's vigilance towards the unaging old man increased by several folds. Young Master Tian didn't interrupt and only stood behind old man Bu. The old man looked at Lu Yin and smiled. "You must be Lu Yin." Lu Yin nodded. "I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm an honorary disciple of Everlasting Sky Island. Even Haizid Shenwei calls me junior apprentice brother, while I address him as senior apprentice brother Shenwei. If I bow to senior, then senior Shenwei might not be able to explain himself. Senior should have heard of his temper before. The old man smiled and waved his hand. Etiquette is only on the surface. Do these people really respect this old man? As he spoke, the Unaged man swept his gaze across everyone. Many people's hearts trembled. He then looked at Lu Yin. Perhaps many people here want to drag me out of the Neoverse and see what the 9 directors are capable of. Huh. Lu Yin smiled. This old man's words and actions seemed to be easygoing, but every step he took was filled with dignity and tyranny. He was indeed worthy of being called a superior. Lu Yin was not capable of hiding a dagger behind a smile. Long Sky Islands, Mr. Shenwei, this old man has met you a few times. You are a disciple in name of Long Sky Island. This is a pretty good opportunity, so you have to cherish it. Bulao praised with a smile. Lu Yin nodded. I understand. By the way, this old man is very curious. How did you leave the Neo-Human Alliance? Where is their headquarters? Bulao suddenly asked as he stared at Lu Yin. Tian Shao subconsciously raised his head to look at Lu Yin. It was the same for Old Monster Chi. The people of the Outerverse did not really understand why Lu Yin had been able to escape from the Neo-Human Alliance. They only knew that it was inconceivable. However, the old man knew that the person who had captured Lu Yin was one of the 7 sky gods, an existence that truly stood at the peak of the human domain. He was an existence that could fight against Elder Chan and escape unscathed. Yet, someone who had been captured by such a person had actually managed to escape. This was an extraordinary shock to the Hall of Honor. If Lu Yin hadn't been backed by Eternal Sky Island and Master Yuan, someone from the Hall of Honor would have suggested that they capture him and interrogate him. I don't know where the headquarters are located, but as for leaving the Neo-Human Alliance, that was just a coincidence. The old man's eyes flashed. This sentence was equivalent to not saying anything. May I know why Senior has appeared at the Outerverse Great Eastern Alliance Conference? Lu Yin asked, even though he already knew the answer. Old Man Bu smiled. The Outerverse is about to be gifted to the 6th mainland, and the Hall of Honor has appointed me to oversee the Great Eastern Alliance in order to prevent any unrest from occurring. Actually, this is also to pacify the Outerverse. After all, the Hall of Honor is not willing to give up on the Outerverse unless they have no other choice. I've come here to discuss with everyone how we can survive this crisis. The unaging old man's words stirred up quite a few people at the Alliance conference. Compared to Lu Yin, they naturally believed that the unaging old man could lead them through this crisis. Lu Yin silently scolded himself for spouting so much nonsense. He had also subconsciously asked this question, which gave Bulao an opportunity to rope in the others. Senior, there's no need for you to worry about the Outerverse matters. With Master Yuan around, I've already discussed this matter with the Interstellar Arbitration's presiding judge, Mu En, and the other directors. There will definitely be a way. I appreciate Senior's good intentions. Faced with the suppression of the unyielding elder's status, Lu Yin could only bring up Master Yuan. Although the people from the Outerverse did not understand the division of power within the Hall of Honor, they knew that Master Yuan was definitely at the highest level. Lu Yin had Master Yuan behind him and the old man was a director. Everyone felt extremely conflicted. Other directors? Which directors? The unaging old man asked. Lu Yin shrugged. It's a private matter, so it's not convenient for me to reveal it. Senior, you can let your grandson return to the Neoverse. This junior just so happens to be at Realm Mountain, and I would like to invite young Master Tian to show me around. Young Master Tian raised his head and asked coldly, didn't you want me to be unable to return to the Neoverse? The unaging old man glared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin was not afraid. That will depend on young Master Tian's choice. I'm very curious. What choice will you make that will prevent my grandson from returning to the Neoverse? The unaging old man asked. His face sank and he was no longer smiling. He had realized that Lu Yin did not care about his attitude, and his tricks were obviously useless against Lu Yin. Young Master Tian looked at Lu Yin provocatively. Since the conversation had already reached this point, Lu Yin did not intend to be polite. Senior Shenwei once told this junior that there will be no complaints if one dies in a battle between peers. However, if the older generation interferes, they will not agree. I am of the same generation as young Master Tian. Senior, do you wish to interfere? The unaging old man replied, "A battle between peers refers to combat. My grandson is not proficient in combat, so how can he compete with you? He's currently overseeing the Great Eastern Alliance on my behalf. The Great Eastern Alliance does not need anyone else to oversee it." Lu Yin's tone turned cold and he even raised his voice. The unaging old man frowned. "You wish to defy the Hall of Honor's orders?" Lu Yin looked at the unaging old man. "If I remember correctly, although the Hall of Honor has the ability to command the entire universe, it is not the ruler of the universe. It also does not have the authority to arbitrarily interfere with the internal affairs of the various great powers. The Great Eastern Alliance was established by me, and even the Hall of Honor does not have the authority to take over it." The Sixth Mainland. The unaging old man had just started to speak, but Lu Yin rudely interrupted him. "Forget about the Sixth Mainland. Even if the Sixth Mainland wants to take over the Outerverse, it will take a very long time. Besides..." His eyes went wide. "Whether the Outerverse stays or leaves is up to us. No one can make the entire Outerverse give up resistance with just a single sentence. The Sixth Mainland cannot threaten us, and the Hall of Honor cannot make us abandon our homeland. Even if we die, we will resist to the end." "That's right, we will not abandon our homeland," a man suddenly shouted during the Alliance conference. His face flushed red as he had been holding back these words for a long time. "That's right, we will not abandon our homeland. We will not give up." Not everyone would resign themselves to fate and leave their fate to others to decide. Those who had cultivated to the point where they could participate in the Alliance conference were all people with strong wills, and there were many who would rather die than submit. Once someone took the lead, they would be able to do anything. Lu Yin's Great Eastern Alliance wanted to unify the Outerverse, but it was not a true unification. It was merely an alliance. Otherwise, not even a tenth of the Outerverse would be under their control, let alone the entire Outerverse. The Sixth Mainland's desire to take over the Outerverse was completely different from the Great Eastern Alliance's desire to unify the Outerverse. Many people's hot-bloodedness was stimulated. The pressure from the elder behind young Master Tian immediately decreased, but it was offset by an even more magnificent power. The elder was shocked. "An emissary?" The unaging old man was astonished, as an emissary had actually taken action. An emissary was different from an enlighter. "I wonder which old friend is here? Please show yourself," the unaging old man said as he looked around. No one answered. The unaging old man asked again, "I wonder which old friend is here? Please show yourself." Still no one answered. The unaging old man's face sank, as the Outerverse was not as easy to control as he had imagined. He looked at Lu Yin. The Outerverse, the Innerverse, the Cosmic Sea, and finally the Neoverse. The Neoverse is the center of the entire human domain. Some people can cause the Great Eastern Alliance to collapse with a single word, while others can cause others to soar to the heavens with a single word. You're a smart person, so you should know what I'm talking about. What you have right now is not truly under your control. It's just that others don't want to interfere. The smart thing to do is to use the cards in your hands to obtain the greatest benefits. Lu Yin smiled. "I'm not that interested in the Neoverse. I just want to be an idle person in the Outerverse or live and die with the Outerverse." At the Alliance conference, many people looked at Lu Yin fervently. Not bad, this was how someone from the Outerverse should be. The old man shook his head and sighed. "Young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you have the support of Everlasting Island? Everlasting Island can't interfere with the matters of the Hall of Honor, let alone an in-name disciple like you. The Outerverse return to the Sixth Mainland is inevitable, and I'm the only one who can think of a way to salvage the situation. I don't want you to risk your life for nothing. Who doesn't have family and cherished friends?" Lu Yin raised his head. "I'm not so old that I have to think of the big picture for everything I do. If I don't have the courage to fight, then how can I talk about the future? Do you think that I can only cower in fear when a powerful enemy approaches? That's not the big picture. You're just a coward." The old man's eyes went wide. "Impudent. Junior, don't think that you can speak to me in such a manner just because you're backed by Eternal Sky Island. There are only a few people from Eternal Sky Island, and while they're powerful, they don't have much influence. They also don't have the ability to influence the Hall of Honor's orders. You can forget about your position as head of the Hall of Honor for now. When Night King Zhenwu used honor points to accuse you of being a traitor to the Fifth Mainland, I still feel that he wasn't lying. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. My status as Fatsi will be reclaimed by presiding Judge Mu En. As for Night King Zhenwu's accusation, Master Yuan will naturally uphold justice. The unaging old man's gaze turned cold. The 9 directors have a special privilege that can only be used once every 100 years to prevent others from interfering with their authority. Young one, I haven't used this privilege in hundreds of years. You're the first one. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he stared at the unaging old man Wei Rong, and the rest watched as the two of them confronted each other. They were silent and their thoughts were complicated. Who would have thought that a young man would be able to compete with a peak figure from the Hall of Honor? If Lu Yin won this time, then his status would be completely different and he would no longer be restricted to the Outerverse. At this moment, the blueprint that he had once drawn up appeared in his mind, but he had always felt that it was unrealistic. That blueprint represented his desire to attack the Innerverse, and it represented his desire to create a great undertaking. Lu Yin had to win. Just as Lu Yin and the unaging old man were confronting each other, another person appeared where the unaging old man was standing. It was Invincible Heizage. Of the 9 directors, the unaging old man was widely acknowledged to have the best temper, and he was also the director who listened to the opinions of others the most easily. He was very popular and he never offended anyone. He also frequently defended the interests of the lower echelons of the Hall of Honor, which was why he had a very good reputation in the Hall of Honor. What people loved to talk about the most was that he did not put on any airs at all. He had once said that if there were any urgent matters, one could directly go to his residence and look for him. There was no need to report to him. Rather than wasting time, it was better to deal with the matter as quickly as possible. Chapter 1190. As long as they could find where he lived, they would be able to enter directly. Not to mention the 9 directors, even the Hall of Honor, who had even the slightest bit of authority, would not have done such a thing. But he had done it, and he had done it for hundreds of years, earning the respect of countless people. Also, as he said, he had never used his only privilege as a director. If not for the Outerverse and for the sake of his grandson young Master Tian, he would not have offended Lu Yin and used his special authority, which would have offended everlasting Sky Island. Regardless of whether he was faking it or not, he had done it. Many people admired him. Today, as usual, anyone who had urgent matters could enter his residence directly. Therefore, when Heizage Wudi entered, he heard that sentence. Impudent Junior. Don't think that you dare to speak to me like this just because you're backed by Eternal Sky Island. There are only a few people in Eternal Sky Island. I'll use the authority that can only be used by directors for 100 years to imprison you. Don't even think about leaving before you're completely cleared of suspicion. The 9 great counselors have a special privilege for 100 years to prevent others from interfering with their authority. Junior, this old man hasn't used this privilege for hundreds of years. You are the first one. Heizage Wudi silently watched as Bu Lao and Lu Yin fought. He listened to Bu Lao's words and did not move. I really don't understand. Is it worth it for you to offend Eversky Island for the sake of the Outerverse? You're just a director, you can be replaced at any time. The old man shouted coldly, so what if it's Eternal Sky Island? Can't affect me at all. Besides, I'm only suspecting that you're a traitor of the Fifth Mainland. Even if Eternal Sky Island wants to interfere, it's useless. I'm the one who will decide your fate. I will keep your identity as Fartzi for 100 years. Actually, I don't need 100 years. Once you leave the younger generation, you will no longer be Fartzi. This is my only privilege as a director. No one can help you. Heizage Wudi silently turned around and left. His gaze was as gloomy as water. Back in the Star Alliance Major Realm, Lu Yin stared coldly at Ageless. This old man had already decided to shed all pretense of cordiality for the sake of his grandson, and he didn't even care about Eternal Sky Island. Hold on, Lu Yin suddenly remembered that this old man had already been a director for several hundred years, and he might be stepping down soon. He was trying to think of a way to get his grandson to replace him. It seemed unlikely, but if his grandson could really manage the Great Eastern Alliance with his dazzling resume, it might not be impossible under his control. At most, it would only take a few more decades. This old man must have operated for a long time for his grandson. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put all his eggs in one basket to promote his grandson. For the sake of a future director position, he would not hesitate to offend anyone. Just as he was thinking about this, the screen suddenly disappeared. He looked at Zijing strangely and saw someone standing behind her. It was Invincible Heizage. Invincible Sage's expression was unsightly. Senior brother Wudi? Lu Yin was puzzled. Heizage Wudi came to Lu Yin's side and placed a hand on his shoulder. You talk too much. Today I'll show you how Everlasting Island handles matters. With that, he disappeared with Lu Yin. Zijing facepalmed. Something big was about to happen. In the Outerverse at the Alliance Conference, Lu Yin's image disappeared, leaving everyone puzzled. Old Man Bu found it strange and he hoped that Lu Yin would give up on the Outerverse. He didn't want to offend Everlasting Island or Master Yuan over this matter, but he had no other choice. He would retire in a few more decades at most, and he had started operating the Great Eastern Alliance 100 years ago for his son's sake. He had wanted his son to become a director in the future, but an accident had occurred. Fortunately, he had a grandson. Originally, there hadn't been enough time and his grandson had been too young. Even with Old Man Bu's management, it would take at least 100 years or even several hundred years for him to become a director. Who would have thought that the Outerverse would have such a large piece of cake? As long as young Master Tian could smoothly manage the Great Eastern Alliance for 100 years, then with Old Man Bu's management he would be able to become a director in 100 years and become the youngest director in history. For this day Old Man Bu had sacrificed too much. He had been kind to others and had never offended anyone. All of this had exhausted him physically and mentally. The Outerverse was a shortcut, and for this shortcut he had to offend the people he needed to offend. Old Man Bu only hoped that Lu Yin would be tactful and not cause any accidents. Suddenly Old Man Bu's image disappeared as well. Everyone was puzzled. First it was Lu Yin and now Old Man Bu. What was going on? In the Neoverse, the Realm Mountain shook and countless people in the Hall of Honor were shocked. What was going on? Was the Neo-Human Alliance attacking again? At this moment Lu Yin's heart was shaken. He had personally seen Invincible Sage attack the Realm Mountain. That's right, he had attacked the Realm Mountain, the headquarters of the Hall of Honor. It was the core of the human domain that housed dozens of great worlds. Invincible Sage had acted so decisively and destroyed an entire mountain with a single palm strike. Was he crazy? Lu Yin was bold, but at this moment he felt that Invincible Sage was even bolder. He was crazy. Many powerful auras swept over. Senior Invincible, what are you doing? Brother Invincible, let's talk things over. Invincible Sage, have you gone mad? Lu Yin's scalp went numb. Many unimaginable auras had appeared at this moment. These people couldn't all be powerhouses with power levels in the hundreds of thousands, right? How could there be so many of them? Had he poked a hornet's nest? On the Realm Mountain, the unaging elder walked out pathetically from the mountain that had been attacked by Invincible Sage. His face was pale and he looked up. When he saw Invincible Sage and Lu Yin, his eyes narrowed and his heart sank. Invincible Sage sneered at him. My Eversky Island doesn't have much influence, so I can only use this method to request a meeting with you. Can you return my junior brother's position as Fatsi? Or do you want my master to personally appear? I wonder if the words Almighty Sage Heavenly Master are enough for you to be magnanimous? Lu Yin blinked. This was a conversation between him and the unaging elder. How did his senior brother know? The unaging elder thought that Lu Yin was complaining and he hurriedly shouted, Senior Invincible, don't listen to a junior's instigation. I've been in the Hall of Honor for so many years, and you should know what kind of person I am. Why would I slander Eversky Island? Around them, one figure after another appeared. There were men and women, young and old, and they all watched this scene while staring at Invincible Sage warily. Even though these people were on high alert, Invincible Sage didn't care at all. At his level there were too few people who could suppress him. Even the Hall of Honor, which was sacred and inviolable to countless people, he still dared to make a move. Lu Yin was speechless. Were the people of Eversky Island all like this? Heizage Leon had formed Leon's armada and subdued the pirates of the human domain. He was known as the Pirate King, and Heizage Shenwei often visited brothels when he had nothing better to do. He spoke like a hoodlum, and this Invincible Sage was supposed to be a normal person. Who would have thought that he was the most abnormal? Would a normal person attack the Hall of Honor? This was simply inconceivable. However, from the expressions of the people around him, It seemed like this wasn't the first time he had done something like this. Invincible Sage stared coldly at the unaging elder. I heard it with my own ears. You said that Eversky Island doesn't have much influence, so I can only do things that have influence. The unaging elder's expression turned ugly. He suddenly remembered that his home was open to anyone, let alone someone like Invincible Sage. The people surrounding Invincible Sage all looked at the unaging elder. Although Invincible Sage was bold, he wasn't an unreasonable person. It seemed like this was the reason behind his actions. The Hall of Honor was very complicated. Aside from the Interstellar Arbitration, the Lockbreaker Society, and other large organizations, there were even more detailed divisions. For example, the 9 great counselors were responsible for dealing with mundane matters, while others were responsible for dealing with extreme powerhouses. The Realm Mountains were existences that did not interfere with each other. But now, Invincible Sage Invincible Elder had taken action and implicated all of these people. The cultivators who guarded the Realm Mountains were all very powerful, but they had not reached the level of an Invincible Sage. Helpless, someone immediately contacted the Arbiter World and asked for the Arbiter's help. However, the Arbiter did not appear and he simply ignored the request. Someone transmitted a message to the unaging elder, asking him to apologize. It wasn't just one person, everyone did the same. The unaging elder was very popular in the Hall of Honor, and he had been in business for hundreds of years. There were many people who spoke up for him. Senior Invincible, Counselor Elder didn't intentionally slander Eversky Island. If he offended you in any way, just ask him to apologize. There's no need to take action and harm our relationship, someone said. That's right, Brother Invincible. The unaging elder is just a child to you. There's no need to bicker with a child. Senior Invincible, why don't you ask the unaging elder to apologize? As for the child beside you, as long as his status is up to par, he can be reinstated. Invincible Sage looked down at the unaging elder from above, waiting for his reply. At that moment, several figures arrived and appeared not too far away from the unaging elder. Lu Yin focused his gaze and saw a total of 4 people. An old man, 2 middle-aged men, and a white-haired but beautiful woman. These 4 people had attracted his attention because they clearly did not have as powerful auras as the ones surrounding Invincible Sage. There was a feeling that he could not see them clearly, but it was very similar to the unaging elders. If Lu Yin's guess was correct, these people were all counselors. The one that caught Lu Yin's attention the most was the old man. His hair was black and white with a few strands of gray mixed in. He should be a counselor from the Day-Night clan, and his name was Night King Zheng. Senior Invincible, how have you been? The woman who had appeared bowed gracefully. She appeared natural and unrestrained, and her temperament was gentle and comforting. Her appearance had a classical beauty to it. Invincible Sage looked at her. Xianxia, it's indeed been a long time. The woman's name was Xianxia, and she was one of the 9 counselors. Xianxia looked up at Invincible Sage. How did the unaging elder offend Senior Invincible to make you so angry? I don't remember something like this happening in a long time. Haizij Wudi stared at Bulao. My everlasting Sky Island has never interfered with the affairs of the Neoverse, and we've always been aloof from worldly affairs. However, it's not to the point where we don't even dare to speak up when bullied. This junior brother of mine is your Hall of Honor's Fatsi, and he was recommended by Master Yuan. Due to certain reasons, Fatsi's position was temporarily taken away from him, but the head judge just decided to return him. However, this elder Bulao said that he would use his authority to imprison Fatsi and make my junior brother suffer for 100 years. Chapter 1191. Many people looked at the unaging elder in confusion. This director had never competed with anyone and he had always cultivated good karma. Why was he so brazenly offending Everlasting Sky Island today? That shouldn't be possible. No one would believe it, as the unaging elder's temper was just too good, and he had an excellent reputation. However, the other directors' expressions did not change. They were all directors, so how could they not know what kind of person the unaging elder was? It was normal for him to act one way in front of others. Xianxiao looked at the unaging elder. Is that so? The unaging elder's face was pale and he bowed to Haizij Wudi. Senior Wudi, this junior did not mean to slander Everlasting Sky Island. It's just that Night King Zhenwu's accusations against Fatsi Lu Yin were too strong, and he paid the price of 20 honor points to prove that Fatsi Lu Yin was a traitor to the Fifth Mainland. Although there is no proof, this junior believes in Night King Zhenwu's words. I was arguing with Fatsi Lu Yin just now, and he claimed to be a disciple of Everlasting Sky Island and tried to threaten this junior. In a moment of desperation, this junior said something unfavorable to Everlasting Sky Island. This junior is at fault, and this junior is willing to accept any punishment. Lu Yin raised a brow. This old fox had actually dragged him away to divert attention. Haizij Wudi glared at the youth. You still dare to slander me? You must be tired of living. With that, the heavens collapsed and pressed down on the unaging elder. Lu Yin was the closest to Haizij Wudi, and he could sense an unimaginably terrifying power disintegrating the void. He could not comprehend this power, and it felt like an ant facing a storm. If this had been the same Lu Yin who had participated in the Mountain and Sea Realms competition for the 5 astral children, then he would have only sensed that this power was terrifying, but he would not have been able to sense anything more. However, after the competition, his control over star energy had reached the level of a world deity, and he had also broken through to become a hunter in progenitor Chen's tomb. Haizij Wudi's attack had shattered everyone's understanding of the universe, and it felt like another universe was pressing down on the universe that was visible to the naked eye. He suddenly recalled the astral sources that Master Yuan had mentioned before, as well as the true universe. Above the emissary level, the true universe was battling, and this was the true universe collapsing. The unaging elder was shocked. The few people around him who were constantly on guard against Haizij Wudi immediately acted, joining forces to block the unaging elder. Only barely managed to stop him. Senior Wudi, this is the Hall of Honor. Do you want to kill 9 directors? The head judge. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Upper Sage was suppressing these people. These people were the true guardians of the Hall of Honor. At this moment, it was extremely difficult for them to face Upper Sage. This was the highest level battle in the human domain. Those below the level of emissary could not understand it. Even the old man Bu didn't really understand. He only knew that once those people left, he would be dead for sure. At this moment, Night King Jing spoke up. Senior Wudi, the old man's words aren't without reason. If Lu Yin isn't wrong, then why would Night King Zhenwu be willing to give up 20 honor points as the price for his complaint? Everyone knows that honor points are hard to come by, and they're even harder to come by for a young person. 20 points. Forget Night King Zhenwu, even the Hall of Honor's #1 expert Xianxia Fatsi wouldn't be able to afford such a price. Many agreed with Night King Zheng's words, as 20 honor points was just too much. Most of the people present did not have that many honor points. Xin Jiao glanced at Night King Zheng and frowned. Brother Wudi, what you're doing now is no different from silencing a witness. Do you want to clear that junior's name, or do you want him to carry the stigma of being a traitor for the rest of his life? Shouted one of the unrivaled saints. Upper Sage paused and looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin regretted that he had been too hasty in killing Night King Zhenwu. Otherwise, he would have been able to get Night King Zhenwu to withdraw his complaint, and he would not have been in so much trouble. It looks like the directors have decided that I'm a traitor of the Fifth Mainland? Lu Yin asked loudly as he looked at the old man and the others, especially Night King Zheng. This person probably wanted him dead even more than the old man Bu. Night King Zheng's gaze was calm. Whether or not we've decided to do so requires an investigation. The Hall of Honor's motto has always been that those without evidence are innocent. Even if we decide that you're a traitor, there's nothing for you to worry about without evidence. Director Old Man Bu wants to use his only authority as a director against you. He's just too angry, and he's not targeting Eversky Island. Lu Yin laughed. So you're saying that even without evidence, you've decided that I'm a traitor? We didn't say that, Night King Jing replied. Lu Yin laughed. Everyone knows that the Night King clan has a deep grudge with me. I was the one who killed Night King Zhenwu, not Director Old Man Bu. It might seem like it has nothing to do with me, but his grandson is trying to seize the authority to oversee the Outerverse's Great Eastern Alliance, and the Great Eastern Alliance was founded by me. At this point, Lu Yin looked around. Everyone, is it fair for me to let these two exercise their authority as directors? This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Everyone fell silent, as they were not stupid. These two obviously had a grudge against Lu Yin, and they were clearly targeting him. Upper Sage looked at Xin Jiao. I remember that there are 9 directors. Are the other directors not going to care? Xianxia smiled. Of course not. We've just discussed the investigation of this child, and the old man Bu and Night King Zheng have decided to withdraw. Night King Zheng suddenly looked at Xianxiao. Xianxiao raised a hand to stop the Night King from speaking. She then looked back at Upper Sage. This junior guarantees that there will be no conflicts of interest among the people investigating this child, and no one will be biased. What do you think, Senior Woody? Upper Sage snorted. What about that director's only privilege? Xianxiao smiled. If the direction of the investigation is unfavorable to this child, then the directors can use their privileges. If there is no evidence at all or if there is no possibility of a traitor, then their privileges cannot be used. Night King Zheng could not take it anymore. Director Xian, whether or not we use our privileges is our own business. You have no right to deny it. Xianxiao looked at Night King Zheng, and her gaze was completely different from when she looked at Upper Sage Woody. It was filled with ruthlessness and awe. The only reason you're a director is to pacify the Immerse, not because you have the authority to make decisions. Don't think too highly of yourself. Your authority is not that great. Night King Zheng's expression turned ugly. Xianxiao looked at the old man Bu. She could deny Night King Zheng, but she could not deny the old man Bu. After all, the old man Bu represented the Neoverse, and the benefits behind him could not be underestimated. The old man Bu raised his head and shouted, "As for whether or not Lu Yin is a traitor, the other directors will investigate. I will not interfere nor will I use my privileges. However, Lu Yin cultivates death energy, and as one of the 9 directors of the Hall of Honor, I have no choice but to supervise him. If necessary, I can use my privileges." The old man Bu's words caused an uproar in the crowd. Death energy was something that the Spectre clan cultivated. The Innerverse and Outerverse did not know much about it, but how could the people of the Neoverse, especially the Hall of Honor's headquarters, not know about it? Anyone who cultivated death energy would be considered a member of the Spectre clan, with the exception of the 7 Quartz-Shi family. Thank you, brothers, for your continued support. Follow the Wind will continue to update. Persevere, persevere, persevere. Although the 3rd chapter is a little short, Follow the Wind will do his best. Thank you, brothers, for your support and understanding. Thank you. End of chapter. Chapter 1192. By mentioning Lu Yin's death chi cultivation, the unyielding elder had completely shed all pretense of cordiality with Eternal Sky Island. He had already offended Heizage, so it did not matter if he offended him again. Everyone looked at Lu Yin. This person had cultivated death chi. The way everyone looked at him instantly changed. Even Xianxiao's gaze towards Lu Yin had changed. Although cultivating death chi wasn't an explicit crime, it was still a potential threat. Heizage raised his brows. It's true that my junior brother cultivates death chi, but the head inquisitor has already made his decision. My junior brother will not be affected. The unyielding elder was stunned, and then his gaze turned vicious. He did not know about this, and rebutting the head inquisitor's decision was the same as publicly contradicting the head inquisitor. Many people around them looked at the unyielding elder as if he was an idiot. The unyielding elder felt his scalp go numb as he saw many mocking and sympathetic looks. He steeled his heart. Since he had already spoken, there was no way he could take back his words. He thought about it and said loudly, "The Interstellar Tribunal's decision is based on whether the person is guilty or not. Cultivating death chi is not a crime, but the Spectre clan's death chi has a special characteristic. It can be easily suppressed by higher-level specters and it can even be manipulated. Everyone knows about this. If Lu Yin was just a normal cultivator, it would not be a problem, but he is the master of the Outerverse's Great Eastern Alliance, which is equivalent to the Outerverse's master. Who can guarantee that he won't be controlled by the Spectre clan? Who can guarantee that he will always remain conscious while cultivating death chi? Even Eternal Sky Island cannot guarantee that." Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Only the head inquisitor, the 3 inquisitors, and Heizage knew that he cultivated death chi. Since the unyielding elder knew about it now, it was obvious that Mu Tianluan had told him about it. This despairing elder Mu was quite hostile towards Lu Yin. Also, the unyielding elder still dared to talk about death chi. It seemed like the head inquisitor did not have enough authority, or perhaps it was just as the head inquisitor had said. The president did not interfere with the director's authority. Lu Yin discovered a problem. Master Yuan and Eternal Sky Island did not have any direct influence on the Hall of Honor, and the head inquisitor might not even be able to influence the Hall of Honor. The people who supported him were all extremely powerful, but they did not care about the Hall of Honor's affairs. This gave the unyielding elder the courage to speak up here. Even though the directors could be removed by these people, if they didn't do anything, even Ancestor Realm experts wouldn't be able to support him. This was a problem. Not even an invincible high saint could refute the words of the unaging old man. Although the director was someone who held power on the surface, he was still someone who held power after all. Many people still believed in what he said. The wayless old man had thrown caution to the wind and fought Lu Yin to the death. Unless unparalleled sage slapped him to death, he had every right and reason to imprison Lu Yin. Death Qi was something that Lu Yin could not deny. He had no way of convincing others that he was not under the control of Death Qi, and if he did, they would only suspect that he was from the Spectre clan. Even Lu Yin felt troubled. The old man's words had not been wrong. Even though Eternal Sky Island was powerful, it did not have enough influence. An invincible Heizage would not be able to convince the masses to trust Lu Yin unless the head inquisitor personally intervened, but why would the head inquisitor appear for Lu Yin's sake? There was a moment of silence. Everyone was discussing the death aura. The situation was developing in a disadvantageous direction for Lu Yin. The old man was breathing heavily. Since he had already offended the Long Sky Island, he might as well offend them all the way. He wanted to create his own image as an iron-blooded director who did not fear the Long Sky Island. I'm sorry to interrupt. A stuttering voice spoke up from below, sounding a little fearful. Everyone subconsciously looked down. At the foot of the destroyed mountain peak, there was a very rustic youth with a mushroom hairstyle and large spectacles. He looked very young as he struggled to raise his right hand. He was still hugging a book that was half a meter thick. When he saw the crowd look over, the youth seemed to be frightened. He swallowed hard and coughed. I'm sorry to interrupt. Actually, Death Qi is just a type of cultivation power. It's essentially no different from star energy, so there's no such thing as good or bad. The old man's gaze turned cold and he shouted, "What did you say? Say it again." The mushroom hairstyle youth panicked and the book fell to his feet. He howled in pain, clearly frightened. Lu Yin was stunned. The Hall of Honor's headquarters actually had such a strange person. Wasn't this guy cultivating? He was even a melder, so how could it hurt to be hit by a book? The crowd looked at the youth strangely. The mushroom hairstyle youth picked up the book with great difficulty and looked at the old man fearfully. This is written in the history books. I was just reading it. The old man barked. What's your name? The Hall of Honor will not allow someone with a weak will like you to appear. You want to cultivate Death Qi? Arrest him. Lu Yin shouted. How impressive. Director old man, are you not going to let others speak? The old man's gaze turned sinister, and he snorted coldly as he stared at the mushroom hairstyle youth. Xianxia smiled at the youth. I remember you. You're from the History Research Institute, right? The mushroom hairstyle youth pushed up his spectacles and nodded. Little sure. All right, little sure. What are you trying to say? Is it okay for Lu Yin to cultivate Death Qi? Xianxia asked with a gentle smile. Little Sure gulped again and opened the book. After searching for a while, he pushed up his spectacles. Death Qi is not something unique to the Spectre clan. The Spectre clan only discovered and used Death Qi, and after countless years of reproduction, they became the most suitable race for cultivating Death Qi. In theory, anyone can cultivate Death Qi, and as long as they slowly accept it, their descendants will be able to cultivate it after many years. The more they cultivate, the better they will be able to create another Spectre clan. Those who cultivate Death Qi will be suppressed or even controlled by the Spectre clan. This kind of power is used by the Spectre clan to recruit spies, the old man barked. Little Sure pushed up his spectacles. Star energy can be suppressed as well. The old man raised a brow. Those who cultivate Death Qi can easily be controlled by higher-level specters. Little Sure cowered. That's just being suppressed and unable to resist. It's the same for normal cultivators. Lu Yin laughed. Director old man, you're trying to control Brother Mushroom right now. With your strength, controlling a melder is too easy. Could it be that you can't cultivate star energy? The old man solemnly replied, no matter how you explain it, Death Qi is enough to make it easier for the Spectre clan to control you. You will never be able to escape. That's right, unless you abolish death qi, Night King Jing said loudly. Little Shi raised his hand and gulped. Haizij Wudi pointed at him. Speak. The old man and Night King Jing both glared at Little Shi. Countless people around them looked at him in surprise. A minor melder had actually dared to butt in? Who gave him the guts? Little Shi was very nervous, and he flipped open his book again to steal a glance at the old man. He was very afraid, but he still said, actually, death qi also has its own suitability. It doesn't mean that someone who cultivates death qi will be controlled by the Spectre clan. There's also a possibility that that person is more suited to cultivating death qi, or that they've obtained some sort of opportunity such as a technique or innate gift, that they can use death qi to control the Spectre clan. The old man was furious and he wanted nothing more than to slap Mushroom Head to death. Lu Yin raised his head. No wonder I didn't feel anything when I cultivated death qi. Everyone can check with the 7 courts. Lu Yin was not controlled by the Spectre clan at all in progenitor Chen's tomb. In fact, I even suppressed them. The old man opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. As long as there was a possibility of controlling the Spectre clan, then he could not use his only authority to target Lu Yin. Otherwise he would not be offending Eternal Sky Island, but rather Haizij Wudi might actually slap him to death. Night King Jing gloomily stared at Mushroom Head. Kid, don't spout nonsense. Death qi is the Spectre clan's power. This is common knowledge in the universe and it's publicly acknowledged. Little Shi's attitude suddenly changed and he glared at Night King Jing with a furious expression. You're the one spouting nonsense. It's people like you who have messed up history. People who treat common knowledge as history are the most foolish. Death qi doesn't belong to the Spectre clan but the Death God. You idiot. Night King Jing was enraged. What did you say? Little Shi was stunned, but he quickly reacted and crouched down, placing the book above his head to block his mushroom head. Sorry. I didn't mean it. Night King Jing raised a hand about to attack Little Shi, but Haizij Wudi snorted and dragged Little Shi over. Lu Yin caught him and Night King Jing did not dare attack again. The old man shouted, Everyone, did you hear that? This kid is spouting nonsense. There's no such thing as a death god. He's just making things up. Night King Jing replied, That's right. Does death qi belong to the death god? Then does star energy belong to the star god? This isn't the home of the gods, so there's no such thing as gods. Little Shi looked up and mumbled, I'm not spouting nonsense. The death god is the most ancient existence and it was the death god who created death qi. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat and he looked at Little Shi. The book above his head was huge. No one believed Little Shi's words as the death god was too ridiculous. There was no such thing as a death god. At that moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. Perhaps it had just appeared or perhaps it had been there for a long time, but no one had noticed it. Haizij Wudi was the first to notice and his expression changed as he respectfully said, Wudi greets Elder Chan. Everyone else saw the figure and bowed in unison, Greetings Elder Chan, greetings Elder Chan. Lu Yin bowed as well and he glanced up. The real boss had appeared. Was it Elder Chan? If even Haizij Wudi was so respectful, then this person might be the biggest boss in the entire Hall of Honor. Elder Chan looked down and fixed his gaze on Haizij Wudi. You're becoming more and more impudent. Haizij Wudi respectfully replied, I didn't want to either, but that director went too far and targeted the people of Eversky Island. Elder Chan was amused. Don't spout nonsense. He's not from Eversky Island. Haizij Wudi replied, Lu Yin is an in-name disciple of Eversky Island. He's willing to take the sage celestial master as his master? Elder Chan asked with a strange expression. Haizij Wudi looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin found it strange that the topic had changed to this. If he answered yes, then Eversky Island could openly protect him, and Haizij Wudi's actions would not be a problem. However, he had a master who had answered Haizij Shenwei's question. Lu Yin didn't know how to answer. If he didn't answer well, then not only would he be blamed, but even Haizij Wudi would be blamed. Elder Chan looked at him quietly with a slight smile. Haizij Wudi kept shooting glances at Lu Yin. The mushroom-headed Little Shi looked at Lu Yin curiously. There was admiration, reverence, excitement, and curiosity. Lu Yin thought about it for a moment before helplessly saying, Senior Wudi, I'm sorry. I have a master, so I can't take the sage celestial master as my master. Lu Yin cannot be an ungrateful person. Haizij Wudi was taken aback, but he nodded. It's fine. Be yourself. Lu Yin was grateful. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 1193. Haizij Wudi looked up at Elder Chan. Lu Yin is an honorary disciple of Everlasting Sky Island. Even though he has yet to become a disciple of the sage, he still has the status of a disciple. Elder Chan was amused. Below, the unaging elder bowed respectfully. Elder Chan, please make the decision. Lu Yin is suspected of betraying the Fifth Mainland, and now that he cultivates death energy, he might become a puppet controlled by the Spectre clan. I wanted to exercise my authority as a director, but Senior Wudi threatened me with his life. Knight King Jing took the opportunity to speak up. Elder Chan, please make the decision. Our lives were threatened. Xianxia and the other 3 directors did not speak. Haizij Wudi was furious, and he glared at the unaging elder. Who threatened your lives? The unaging elder and Knight King Jing did not speak either. As a junior, Lu Yin was even less suited to speak at this time. Everything was awaiting Elder Chan's decision. Elder Chan waved his hand. It's just a farce. Disperse. Everyone was stunned. Disperse? That was too simple. Haizij Wudi was delighted. Thank you, Elder Chan. The unaging elder was unwilling. Elder Chan, Senior Wudi destroyed the Realm Mountain, and that junior even cultivated death energy. Elder Chan replied, there are countless paths to cultivation. Didn't that child already explain? Death energy was not created by the Spectre clan. If he can cultivate death energy to maintain his consciousness, then he might even be able to control the Spectre clan. In the future, he will be able to make great contributions against the Neo-Human Alliance. Why are you being so harsh? The unaging elder was helpless and could only agree. Return Fatzi's position to that child. Also, let the outerverse matters be handled by them. Don't interfere. My Hall of Honor has always been at the peak of the human domain, and we do things fairly. We are not tyrannical. This time you've gone too far. Elder Chan glanced at the unaging elder. Your privileges are revoked. He then looked at Lu Yin with a gentle gaze. Kid, you're not bad. Very good. Lu Yin was stunned, but then he bowed deeply. Senior, you flatter me. Thank you for making the decision for me. Elder Chan smiled and looked deeply at Lu Yin before disappearing. Everyone could see that Elder Chan was protecting Lu Yin. Not only did he not pursue the matter of Lu Yin cultivating death energy, but he had also stripped the unaging elder of his privileges and returned the outerverse to Lu Yin. There was a huge issue here. Elder Chan was the true master of the Hall of Honor, and his attitude towards Lu Yin instantly made everyone understand something. Their gazes towards Lu Yin changed again, and finally they all became very gentle. Some even bowed to Lu Yin. Little Sher looked at him enviously. You're amazing, can you teach me? Lu Yin didn't have the time to bother with Mushroom Head. He was thinking about Elder Chan's attitude and that gaze. How should he describe it? It was very strange, as if the old man had seen through him. Below, Bu Lao's body swayed and he almost fell to the ground. This time he had suffered a crushing defeat. Not only had he failed to seize the outerverse, but he had also allowed Lu Yin to make a comeback. He had even obtained Elder Chan's explicit protection, which meant that Lu Yin's position in the Hall of Honor would be completely overturned. As for him, the disappearance of his privilege meant that his path had come to an end. Each of the 9 directors had special privileges. These privileges were equivalent to the guarantee of the director's status. Therefore, in general, the directors would not use them easily. This privilege was effective even for the emissaries. The disappearance of these privileges also meant that the director would only exist in name, and no one would think highly of him anymore. Xianxia coldly glanced at Bu Lao. They had seen how he had operated for so many years, but they had not been able to interfere. This person had too many benefits behind him. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Now that his privileges had disappeared, his authority was slowly being eroded. This person was already on the decline. He was delusional to think that he could bring his grandson back to the position of director. Senior Wudi will take our leave, Xianxia respectfully said to Wudi. The surrounding crowd gradually dispersed. Even Elder Chan had appeared, so Wudi would not make any more moves. Haizij Wudi asked Xianxia, when will my junior brother's position be returned? Xianxia smiled. Immediately, of course. Lu Yin sighed. After almost 10 months, his position had finally been returned. It had not been easy and there had been many twists and turns. In the end, Elder Chan had appeared, which was something he had not expected. Because of him, Everlasting Island, the Hall of Honor's directors, and even the Interstellar Court and the Day-Night clan had all been implicated. Fortunately, he had won in the end. The commotion this time had been huge and he was the one who had benefited the most. Elder Chan's explicit support had made him realize that his status had changed. From now on, he would be able to move freely in the Hall of Honor, and his status would not be any lower than that of the Prime Clarity sect. Lu Yin coldly looked at Bulao. The Outerverse is not that easy to enter, and even if you do, it won't be that easy to return. That one sentence scared Bulao into contacting Tian Shao, as he was afraid that Lu Yin would attack him. In the Outerverse at the Alliance Conference, everyone was waiting. Tian Shao was full of confidence. From what he knew, a director was the person with the highest authority in the Hall of Honor. It would be too easy for such a person to threaten a youth, even if that youth's background was not simple. The Outerverse was very important to him and his grandson, so Lu Yin would definitely compromise. The more he thought about it, the happier he became. He swept his gaze across the crowd. Soon these people would all be under his supervision, and his name would be recorded in the annals of history to prepare for his position as a director in the future. At this time no one spoke nor did anyone express their stance. Even those who had excitedly agreed with Lu Yin to live and die with their homeworld did not speak. Wei Rong's expression was calm as he waited. They did not know what had happened in the Neoverse. Beep 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 beep. Tian Shao's gadget beeped and he hurriedly picked it up. He deliberately played his voice. Grandpa. Come back. Bu Lao's voice sounded, revealing his exhaustion and helplessness. Tian Shao was stunned. Come back. Back where? Where else can I go? Do you want to die in the Outerverse? Back to the Neoverse. Bu Lao suddenly became irritable. He had completely lost his competition with Lu Yin, and the price he had to pay was painful. He could not accept it, but he had no choice. Tian Shao was stunned. At the Alliance Conference, everyone was stunned. Wei Rong's lips curled up. Lu Yin was still as awesome as ever, and he was always able to stir up trouble wherever he went. Truthfully, Wei Rong was not really loyal to Lu Yin. The reason why he had not expressed his loyalty to Tian Shao was because both he and Wang Wen were smart people until the very last moment. If they expressed their stance too early, it would be the same as completely exposing themselves in front of others. Lu Yin was always capable of doing outrageous things, and this was Wei Rong's greatest understanding of Lu Yin. Even if his opponent this time was a director of the Hall of Honor, he still had a trace of hope for Lu Yin. Now it seemed that he had been right. Quite a few people were delighted, but only a small portion of them did so. The majority still felt that it would be more hopeful to hand the Outerverse over to the Hall of Honor's director. Green Peak Gorge Master Feng Shu was completely dumbfounded. He had lost. A director from the Hall of Honor had actually lost? How was this possible? This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Tian Shao was even more incredulous. Grandfather, what did Lu Yin do? How could he have defeated you? That's impossible. You're one of the 9 directors, so don't you have special privileges? Grandfather, use your special privileges. There's no need to hide anymore. Shut up. Come back when I tell you to. Brother Jean, please bring him back, Bu Lao said tiredly. The elder behind Tian Shao hurriedly answered, Yes, director. Tian Shao stared blankly at the disconnected call, unable to react for a long time. How could he have lost? This was impossible. This should not have happened. The elder placed a hand on Tian Shao's shoulder and then disappeared with him. The current situation was very clear and there was no place for them in the Outerverse. This was Lu Yin's territory, and from the director's tone he knew that they had caused quite a ruckus this time. It would be best for them to quickly return. Old Qi was also stunned and he did not know what to do. At that moment Wei Rong's gadget beeped. He tapped it open and Lu Yin's image appeared once again. Shao Shi's figure was beside him, and the two of them were looking curiously at the crowd at the Alliance Conference. Greetings, Alliance Leader. Wei Rong stood up and bowed. Meng Tianlong, Gong Chou, Doro, Anji, Xianxia, and the others all bowed at the same time. Greetings, Alliance Leader. Even Feng Shu and the others who had submitted to Tian Shao also bowed respectfully. They lowered their heads in fear, afraid that Lu Yin would settle accounts with them later. Lu Yin swept his gaze across the crowd, and his gaze finally landed on Old Qi. Do you want to tour my Great Eastern Alliance's Alliance Conference? Get lost. The person who had shouted was an enlighter with a power level of over 400,000. He was someone who could be considered a powerhouse even in the Blaze realm. However, even though Lu Yin had shouted at him, Old Qi did not dare to say a single word. Even the Hall of Honor's director had been defeated, let alone him. Old Qi left with an ugly expression. Everyone present at the Alliance Conference was shocked. Although Lu Yin had once been the leader of the Great Eastern Alliance, that had only been limited to the Outerverse, and his influence had not reached the Innerverse, let alone scold such a powerhouse. But now he was acting so casually as if Old Qi and the others were no longer worthy of his attention. This sort of power made everyone tremble in fear, and they were certain that Lu Yin had undergone an earth-shattering change in the Neoverse. Lu Yin asked, "Where's Tian Xiao?" Wei Rong replied, "He left. He should have gone to the Neoverse." Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He had originally wanted to find someone to take action, but after some thought he decided against it. This incident had caused too much of a stir, and even though he was the victim, the 9 directors were the ones who decided to oversee the Great Eastern Alliance. Some of the directors were already dissatisfied that he had snatched back the position of alliance leader. If he went after Tian Xiao, it would seem like he was going too far and he would offend even more people. Lu Yin did not want to offend too many people unless it was absolutely necessary. These directors all had powerful backers behind them and he did not want to make enemies for no reason. Furthermore, Tian Xiao would still be useful to him in the future. I'll still be in the Neoverse for some time, so the Great Eastern Alliance should still proceed according to the previous plan. Wei Rong, I hope that after I return to the Outerverse, that plan can be carried out as soon as possible, Lu Yin said. Wei Rong respectfully replied, "Rest assured, Alliance leader. I've never slacked off." Wei Rong paused for a moment and then he recalled something. He then whispered, "Your Highness, Yan Yan went missing a few days ago." Lu Yin was puzzled. "Missing? What do you mean?" Wei Rong shook his head. "I don't know. It's just that he's gone. I don't know if he left on his own or if he was taken away by someone else." Lu Yin nodded. "Wait for me to go back and deal with it." He then looked at the crowd one more time before his image disappeared. "Thank you for your support, brothers." "Thank you." End of chapter. Chapter 1194. After Lu Yin's image disappeared, Wei Rong beamed at the crowd. "Everyone, did you hear the Alliance leader's words?" Everyone looked at each other and then silently left. Feng Shu's scalp went numb and his entire body trembled. He had forgotten that the Great Eastern Alliance had another plan after the plan to topple the day-night flow zone. Although he did not know the specifics of this plan, the amount of resources mobilized and the time span exceeded the plan to topple the day-night flow zone. The goal of this plan had to be even grander. It couldn't be the entire Innerverse, right? He was frightened by this guess, but he was even more frightened by Lu Yin. Would he still be able to survive after what he had just done? Feng Shu fell into a state of panic. Back at Jie Mountain in the new universe, Lu Yin put down his gadget. Beside him was Xiao Shi, who was holding a large book. As for Haizijwudi, he had left with an ugly expression, saying that he had been called away by Elder Chan. Lu Yin believed that Haizijwudi's fate would not be good. This was not the first time he had caused such a ruckus at Jie Mountain, so it would be strange if Elder Chan let him off. Before Haizijwudi had left, he had told Lu Yin to wait for him at Jie Mountain, and Lu Yin did not want to just wait. "Do you know where I can take the lockbreaker test?" Lu Yin asked Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi's eyes lit up. "You want to go to the lockbreaker realm? I'm going there as well. Let's go together." Lu Yin nodded. "Is it far?" "It's not far. It's just at Jie Mountain. The lockbreaker realm is one of the many worlds here," Xiao Shi said as he led the way. Lu Yin glanced at the mountain peak that Haizijwudi had destroyed. This was where the unaging man had lived, and after this battle that old man's days were over. Although the lockbreaker realm was not far away with Xiao Shi's speed, it would still take some time to get there. Lu Yin could only grab him and fly to the other side of Jie Mountain. They did not fly at high altitudes as this was Jie Mountain. Lu Yin was not as unbridled as Haizijwudi, and he only dared to fly at low altitudes. "Why did you help me just now?" Lu Yin asked curiously. Xiao Shi pushed up his glasses and looked at Lu Yin in confusion. "Help you?" Lu Yin was puzzled. Weren't you helping me just now? Explain the source of the death qi. Xianxia gulped and adjusted his glasses again. I'm just explaining. It seems like everyone doesn't quite understand. This is true history and I don't want others to misinterpret it. Lu Yin was taken aback. It turned out that this fellow wasn't trying to help anyone, but was instead trying to decipher history. That was too careless of him. You've offended the undying old man by doing this. Have you not thought about the consequences? Xianxia was a little confused. Why did you offend him? He doesn't understand either, so I have to explain. Lu Yin was speechless and there was no way for him to continue this conversation. Was there something wrong with this guy's head or was he really that naive? What do you mean by the Grim Reaper? Lu Yin asked. The Death God is humanity's most ancient powerhouse and it was the Death God who created the Death Aura. The Death Aura is a kind of energy that the Death God cultivated, and it has nothing to do with good or bad. It's really not like what most people think. The Death Aura seems to be unique to the Spectre clan, but that's not the case. The Spectre clan was only the first group of people who received the Death Aura and used it. So, they're also humans and so are we. You're saying that if a normal person can absorb Death Aura, then their descendants can use it as well? Lu Yin asked. Xianxia answered seriously, that's not what I mean. It's recorded in the history books. The books don't say that it's certain, but the possibility is very high. The more Death Aura is used, the more people who can directly use it will be born. The Spectre clan has cultivated Death Aura for so long that their descendants can not only directly absorb Death Aura, but their pupils can also change at birth. Most people need to absorb Death Aura to change their pupils. Death Aura is the power of the Death God. Anyone who cultivates Death Aura is theoretically a descendant of the Death God and not a member of the Spectre clan. The same goes for you. Lu Yin was astonished. Is there really such a person as the Death God? Xianxia nodded seriously. Yes. Lu Yin blinked. It wasn't that he didn't believe it. Humanity had developed for countless years and even their history was incomplete. It was normal for a powerhouse to appear who was known as the Death God, but he felt that these words were unbelievable coming from this fellow's mouth. You don't believe me? Xianxia retorted. He opened the book and pointed at it. Look, it's recorded here. Lu Yin looked at the book but it was completely blank. He stared at Xianxia. This fellow was messing with him. Xianxia looked at Lu Yin seriously. Do you believe me now? Lu Yin raised a brow. You're messing with me. Xianxia was dejected. You can't see the words either? Lu Yin was surprised. Are there words? Xianxia nodded helplessly but he seemed to be used to it. Of course there are. The records clearly state that Death Aura is born from the Death God, and the Death God is one of humanity's oldest progenitors. He was born at the dawn of humanity. Can't you see these words? Lu Yin shook his head as this fellow didn't seem to be messing with him. However, there really weren't any words in the book. What a headache. No one believes me. There really are words in the book, Xianxia said helplessly, his entire person dispirited. Is there anyone else besides you who can see the words? Lu Yin asked. Xianxia shook his head. No, I'm the only one who can see them. Lu Yin understood. No wonder no one believed him. Was this fellow crazy? Were there words that only he could see? Unless it was an innate gift. Is this book your innate gift? Lu Yin asked. Xianxia shook his head. I found it at the History Research Institute. Lu Yin didn't say anything else. There were people passing by, sizing them up in surprise. Everyone who passed by looked at them strangely, and Lu Yin felt that these people were definitely looking at Xianxia as if he was crazy. Perhaps this fellow really was crazy, and Lu Yin subconsciously wanted to distance himself from him. The Hall of Honor was the leader of humanity's astral domain, and there were many governing organizations under it. The most famous of these organizations were the Interstellar Tribunal and the Lockbreaker Society. Lu Yin saw the Arbiter Realm and was shocked as it was an entire region of space. When Lu Yin entered the Lockbreaker Realm, he was even more shocked by what he saw. Aside from an entire region of space, there was also an endless amount of spiritual thread. Every planet in space was wrapped in spiritual thread as far as the eye could see. However, this wasn't the most shocking thing, as there was an incomparably large planet not too far away. Oh, it was a source box. It was definitely a source box, and its size far exceeded the 5 sealing planets of Shenwu continent. This source box was the size of a Night King planet. A Night King planet was known as the largest planet in the Innerverse and Outerverse, and its size shocked Lu Yin when he saw it for the first time. A Night King planet was large enough to support a large clan or even multiple large clans. Now this source box was actually comparable in size to a Night King planet. Lu Yin stared blankly at the source box in the distance. He couldn't figure out who could unlock such a source box and what could be obtained from it. Xinwu continent's 5 sealing planets had already baffled Lu Yin, but this source box was even more ridiculous. Windborn, please do your best to persevere for a few more days. Persevere, persevere. Occasionally I'll ask for a reward. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 1195. Actually, what are you looking at? Xianxia asked, following Lu Yin's gaze. That's the source box array in the Lockbreaker realm. Lu Yin's lips twitched. What? A source box array? Xianxia nodded. A source box array. Lu Yin pointed at the unbelievably large source box in the distance. So there's more than one of those? Xianxia nodded. There's a total of 6. Lu Yin had cultivated for many years and had traveled from the Outerverse to the Neoverse, so he could be considered knowledgeable. However, this was too exaggerated. He could imagine how terrifying the killing intent contained within these source boxes was. Even an envoy would find it difficult to withstand, and 6 of these source boxes had formed an array. Who created this array? Lu Yin subconsciously asked. Xianxia thought about it. I can't say. You know about it? Lu Yin was shocked. He had only asked subconsciously, as such matters were generally kept secret. Xianxia nodded. It's recorded in the history books, but I can't tell you. Lu Yin looked at Xianxia in amazement. Did this guy really know about it, or was he just pretending? He pointed at the book. Was it also recorded in that book? Xianxia nodded. Lu Yin was speechless and could not communicate with him. No one could prove whether this guy was telling the truth or not. Right, what rank are you taking the test for? Xianxia asked, looking at Lu Yin curiously. Lu Yin replied, Boundless Advanced. Xianxia was shocked. Boundless Advanced? Lu Yin pursed his lips. You don't believe me? Xianxia was excited and stared at Lu Yin. You're really amazing. Can you teach me? Teach you what? Teach me how to become amazing. That way people will believe whatever I say. Lu Yin glanced at the book. People would believe it if there were some words in the book, but the key was that there were none. Only a fool would believe that. The Lockbreaker realm was a part of space and there were guards on the planet at the entrance. Lu Yin could feel powerful auras sweep past him, which made his hair stand on end. Any random expert in the Hall of Honor could make him feel this way. He did not feel safe here, and the Outerverse was much better. The center of the Lockbreaker world was not a planet but rather a piece of land. It was a piece of land that floated on the surface of the sea, while the sea floated in the starry sky. There were many space wonders, so this was not strange. However, when he saw someone pull out a source box from the sea, his expression changed. What does that mean? Lu Yin asked. Xianxia explained, there are all sorts of source boxes in this sea. Some were placed here by our ancestors, while others were nurtured by source box arrays from the greater realms. If a lockbreaker wants to obtain a source box, they'll have to trade for it with a source box of equal value. You'll definitely be able to obtain something after unlocking the source box here. Lu Yin was surprised. There's such a thing? He was eager to try it out. Lu Yin had come here to take his lock-breaking level test, and all he needed to do was enter the continent in the middle of the ocean. He could take the test there, but Xianxia had brought him to a giant planet beside the ocean. Xianxia had told him that the people on the planet could also help him take his lock-breaking level test. They were all very powerful lock-breakers, and since they were acquaintances, there was no need to trouble them. Lu Yin suspiciously followed him up, mainly because he was curious about the powerful lockbreaker that Xianxia had mentioned. Since he was an acquaintance, perhaps he could ask some questions about lockbreaking. At this moment, 2 figures flew out of the great world. When they saw Xianxia, they were shocked. Isn't that the Xianxia duo? This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. That's normal. The duo is about to reunite again, haha. As he listened to their discussion, Lu Yin looked at Xianxia strangely. The shit-eating duo? Xianxia was a little embarrassed. The more Lu Yin looked at him, the more he felt that this guy was crazy. You have quite a heavy taste. Xianxia was confused. What taste? Xianxia suddenly thought of something and hurriedly explained, You're mistaken, it's not shit-eating. It's qi, the qi as in measuring, the qi as in history books, qi. Lu Yin relaxed as he had thought that Xiao was referring to the shit-eating duo. My friend's surname is Qi and he's called Xiao Qi. My surname is Shi and I'm called Xiao, so. Xiao was a little embarrassed. Lu Yin found it strange, but he did not ask any further. If it was because of their surname, then no one would call him that as it was too insulting. This Xiao was a little weird, so could that Xiao Qi be the same? Not long after, Lu Yin realized that his guess was correct. He looked at the mushroom-headed youth in front of him who wore large glasses and had a cute face. He then looked at Xiao. Were these two brothers? Wow, Xiao, long time no see. The mushroom-headed Xiao Qi was pleasantly surprised. Xiao was also very happy. Long time no see, Xiao Qi. Why didn't you come? I missed you. I was explaining history to others but they didn't believe me. They still don't believe me? They're too stubborn. What about you? Can anyone understand the romance of a mushroom head? Oh, not even one. Master always scolded me and told me to cut off my mushroom head. The head can be cut off but the mushroom can't be messed up. Yes, we must persevere until the end. My book is true history. My mushroom head is a lock-breaking tool and it's the best lock-breaking tool. Come on, let's do our best. Don't give up. 1, 2, 3. Do your best. Don't give up. Lu Yin was stunned and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. He felt like he had suddenly become an idiot. The 2 mushroom-headed youths looked at him fervently. Xiao, he's that Lu Yin? The one who handed over true insight and became the youngest and most promising lockbreaker in the history of the Outerverse. Yes, Xiao Qi, he's that Lu Yin. He unified the Outerverse, cultivated for only 12 years and was able to compete for the mountain and sea realm. He's the Lu Yin who will be recorded in history. Amazing. Why did you bring him here? Is he willing to talk to us? Does he trust us? I don't really trust him right now, but don't worry. I'm confident that I can convince him. He's the same type of person as us. Lu Yin was glad that the monkey was gone, or else he would have been ridiculed. The same type of person? He was not an idiot. Sorry, I still have to take my lock-breaking test, so I won't be accompanying you, Lu Yin said stiffly and then turned to leave. Xiao Qi's eyes lit up. Lock-breaking test? You're about to break through to the boundless advanced level? Lu Yin nodded. Xiao Qi was pleasantly surprised. That's great. I'll take you to Master and have him test you. Lu Yin looked at Xiao Qi. Your master? Xiao Qi nodded and clenched her fists. She excitedly said, one of the strongest lockbreakers in the Neoverse, Gui Juanheng. He's my master. Lu Yin had never heard of this name before as he knew too little about the Neoverse. Xiao Qi was disappointed. You don't know my master? Sorry, it's my first time here, Lu Yin said. Xiao Qi replied, he's from the Outerverse, so it's normal that he doesn't know Master Gui. She then looked at Lu Yin. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Master Gui is one of the strongest lockbreakers in the Lockbreaker Society's headquarters, and he's also a powerful Origin Array Master. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Origin Array Master? Lockbreakers were clearly divided into different levels: Discerning Elementary, Perceptive Intermediate and Boundless Advanced. These levels were further divided into star levels, with 5 stars being the highest. This was common knowledge in the Innerverse and Outerverse. However, above Boundless Advanced Lockbreakers, there was another level called Origin Array Master. Origin Array Masters were those who had reached the level of 5 Boundless Advanced level and were able to control sourcebox arrays. This meant that Master Gui's lockbreaking ability had surpassed that of a 5-star Boundless Advanced Lockbreaker, and he had also mastered sourcebox arrays. Any lockbreaker who had mastered a sourcebox array could not be underestimated. Although the value of a sourcebox array could not compare to that of a secret technique, there were still certain aspects in which they could achieve effects that secret techniques could not. Some sourcebox arrays could even transform the world and create something out of nothing. The reason why the Neo-Human Alliance had been able to enter the Mountain and Sea Realm and Progenitor Chen's tomb was because of sourcebox arrays. Mastering a sourcebox array made a huge difference in status. Any Origin Array Master was a treasure to the human race. If Lu Yin had not coincidentally entered the Mountain and Sea Realm's eye and used his time-stop space to comprehend his star energy to the world realm, who knew how long it would have taken for him to comprehend a sourcebox array? Furthermore, the source box array that he had comprehended was not very powerful, and it was far from being able to ignore space. Only by reaching the level of an origin array master could one unleash the power of a source box array. Lu Yin had never expected that this seemingly crazy person's master would be an origin array master. Lu Yin's expression was respectful. Please introduce me to an origin array master. Xiaoqi was satisfied as Lu Yin's respect for his master made him proud. Wait a moment, I'll call master. He then activated his gadget and sent a message. Not long after, Xiaoqi said to Lu Yin, let's go to master's place. You can take the lock-breaking test there. As long as you reach the level of an origin array master, you'll have the right to take the lock-breaker test, Xiaoshi said. At that moment, Xiaoqi leaned over and whispered something into Xiaoshi's ear. Xiaoshi was shocked. He's there too? Should we wait for a while before going? Xiaoqi gritted his teeth. Yao. He then glanced at Lu Yin. Don't we have him? What's there to be afraid of? Xiaoshi puffed out his chest. That's right. Let's go now. There's nothing to be afraid of. Lu Yin felt strange. He kept having the feeling that these two were discussing something that had something to do with him. Were they trying to drag him into some strange situation? As he looked at the two mushroom heads, he started to panic. There was no origin array master in the Outerverse. No, there was one, Jeffrey. Jeffrey was not from the Outerverse, but had been transferred from the Neoverse. Thus, there was not a single native origin array master in the Outerverse. Lu Yin did not know if there were any in the Innerverse, but there should be. At the very least, the president of the Outerverse Lockbreaker Society was definitely one. According to Xiaoqi, there were only a few people in the Neoverse. Gui Juanheng. No one in the Innerverse or Outerverse knew of her, but she was also known by everyone. When Lu Yin had joined the Lockbreaker Society, there had been a video of a powerhouse unlocking a towering plant's root. That video had greatly affected everyone who had joined the Lockbreaker Society, and Lu Yin was no exception. That person was Gui Juanheng. Lu Yin had thought that this person was an ancient powerhouse, but he had never expected that it would be Gui Juanheng. When Xiaoqi told him about this matter, Lu Yin was shocked. At the same time, he found it strange that such a powerhouse would accept Xiaoqi as a disciple. If Xiaoqi had not mentioned that she was an origin array master, Lu Yin would not have wanted to get close to her. Thank you for your support, brothers. End of chapter. Chapter 1196. On the other side of the planet was Gui Juanheng, and Xiaoqi brought Lu Yin and Xiaoshi there. Gui Juanheng was already waiting for them, and there was also a youth with an indifferent expression. Lu Yin's eyes trembled when he saw the youth. Although he did not use the Ian evolution scripture to look at the rune lines, he could tell that this youth was extraordinary through his star energy. A world-level cultivator's control of star energy was different from that of an ordinary cultivator. This was a feeling. When Lu Yin faced other cultivators, he could influence that person's star energy to a certain extent. Weaker cultivators could even control that person's star energy. However, Lu Yin couldn't feel any sense of control from this youth. The youth's eyes trembled when he saw Lu Yin, and a look of interest appeared on his face. This person's star energy control had reached the world realm, which was what both Lu Yin and the youth thought. Lu Yin only glanced at the youth before shifting his gaze to Gui Juanheng. He could not see her clearly from the video, but now that he saw her in person, Lu Yin was excited. Junior Lu Yin greets Senior Origin Formation Master Gui Juanheng. Gui Juanheng looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. World Realm Control? No wonder you dared to challenge the Boundless Advanced Lockbreaker exam. You have a good chance of passing. Lu Yin solemnly replied, Thank you, Senior. Gui Juanheng nodded and looked at the youth beside her. The youth stepped forward and faced Lu Yin. My name is Wu Dan, and I'm a one-star Boundless Advanced Lockbreaker. Lu Yin's gaze was serious. It's an honor to meet you. Wu Dan earnestly replied, It's an honor to meet you as well, Lu Yin. Your name has been ringing in my ears more than once. Lu Yin was confused. What's the reason? Wu Dan calmly replied, You improved very quickly. You went from a discerning elementary lockbreaker to a perceptive intermediate lockbreaker, and then directly jumped from a 1-star perceptive intermediate lockbreaker to a 5-star perceptive intermediate lockbreaker. This is a rare occurrence in history, and your name even spread from the Outerverse to the Neoverse and into the Lockbreaker world. Lu Yin listened quietly. I didn't pay much attention to you at first as lock-breaking requires experience and not just talent. However, I never expected that your star energy control would reach the world realm. You're the only one in the Outerverse who can compare to me, Wu Dan said. Lu Yin raised a brow. What about the 5 lock-breakers? Wu Dan disdainfully replied, they're just 5 pieces of trash. None of them have reached the boundless advanced lockbreaker level, and no one will be able to reach that level in the next 10 years. That one step is the difference between heaven and earth. They will never be able to compare to me. What about Master Wuxia? Wu Dan was similarly disdainful. He's seen as the successor to the Innerverse Lockbreaker Society's president, and his lock-breaking talent is indeed very high. However, his cultivation is too low. Lock-breaking relies on more than just lock-breaking ability. It's useless if he doesn't have any life-saving abilities. He'll never be able to compare to me whether it's in terms of cultivation or lock-breaking ability. Lu Yin looked at the youth in front of him. He had criticized all of the most outstanding lock-breakers in the Innerverse and Outerverse, but only this youth was worthy of his attention. No, before this, Lu Yin had also looked down on this youth. Wu Dan did not even look at Xiaoqi and Xiaoshi. Instead, she turned around and left the planet. You'll definitely be able to reach the boundless advanced level. After that, try your best to comprehend sourcebox arrays. Otherwise, it'll be too boring. I'll participate in the Supreme Astral Tournament as well, and I'll show those people how powerful lockbreakers are. I don't want to be alone. As he watched Wu Dan leave, Lu Yin did not know where the man's confidence had come from. This person was at most a hunter, while the top powerhouses of the mountain and sea realm had all been enlighters. Lockbreakers did have an advantage in battle, but they were definitely not. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. It wasn't strong enough to be on par with him. Even he himself wasn't sure how strong he was. Xiaoqi heaved a sigh of relief. She's finally gone. That was scary. Xiaoshi nodded. Too scary. Gui Juanheng glared at Xiaoqi. I told you to work harder so that you wouldn't be afraid to participate in the Supreme Astral Tournament. Look at what you've become. Hurry up and cut off your mushroom head. Xiaoqi was just as timid as Xiaoshi, but he was unexpectedly persistent when it came to the mushroom head. The mushroom head is this disciple's lock-breaking tool, and it's a very powerful one that surpasses all other lock-breaking tools. You can't cut it off. Xiaoshi nodded. My history is the correct one. Lu Yin was speechless as he looked at the two of them. They really were the same. This was clearly not the first time Gui Juanheng had seen such a situation, and she helplessly patted her head. She looked at Lu Yin and smiled. I've made a fool of myself. Let's go, I'll take you to the Boundless Advanced Lockbreaker exam. Lu Yin respectfully replied, Thank you, Senior. Gui Juanheng waved a hand. No need to call me Senior. Just call me Master Gui. That's what they all call me. All right, Master Gui. Xiaoshi walked behind Lu Yin and pointed at him, and he looked over curiously. Xiaoshi whispered, Master Gui is easy to get along with, but if he's trying to lockbreak, run away immediately. Why? Lu Yin was stunned. Xiaoshi purposely slowed Lu Yin down and fearfully explained, when Master Gui lockbreaks, he's completely different from how he usually is. It's like he's a completely different person. He's changed, how should I put it? He's very rough and violent, and he beats people up easily. We all ran away quickly and no one dared to stay behind. Dual personality disorder. These 2 words appeared in Lu Yin's mind, and they were very similar to Ming Yan's. The planet was filled with spiritual thread essence, but Lu Yin did not know where it had come from. The entire Great Eastern Alliance had only managed to gather enough spiritual thread essence to fill an entire secret room, but this lockbreaker world was filled with it. Spiritual thread was the most effective material in stopping the dangers of sourceboxes. Even though many sourceboxes were dangerous enough to cause even super powerhouses to raise their eyebrows, they could still be stopped by spiritual thread. It had to be said that everything had its vanquisher, and this was the universe's biosphere. Gui Juanheng stopped and Lu Yin and the other 2 stood behind him. He waved his hand and the spiritual thread that had been spread out on the ground in front of him swept up and rushed into space. A bridge then appeared on the ground. Xiaoshi and Xiaoqi did not feel anything, but Lu Yin's entire body turned solemn. The moment the spiritual thread disappeared, the star energy around the bridge completely changed. The void distorted, but it did not seem real. Countless voices could be heard, including worship, quarrels, battles, cultivation, and so on. It was as if the bridge had experienced someone's entire life. Gui Juanheng looked at Lu Yin. This bridge is a boundless advanced source box. You may begin. If you succeed in lock breaking, you will become a boundless advanced lock breaker. Xiaoqi was shocked. Master, where did this bridge come from? Why haven't I seen it before? Gui Juanheng glared at him. Why would you want to see it? There are many perceptive intermediate source boxes that you can't even see. Xiaoqi was startled and he quickly hid behind Xiaoshi. Lu Yin bowed to Gui Juanheng and then cautiously approached the bridge. At the same time his eyes filled with star energy. Since he was going to lock break on this planet, he could use the Aeon evolution scripture. As his eyes transformed into runes, Lu Yin saw the rune lines that filled the entire bridge. It was very large, and he estimated that there were rune lines with a power level of 300,000. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. This was no longer a simple boundless advanced source box. It should be known that a boundless advanced source box corresponded to a hunter's cultivation, which meant that even the weakest boundless advanced source box could be unlocked by a hunter. There were not many hunters in the entire universe with a power level of 300,000. This source box was definitely not a one-star boundless advanced source box. Gui Juanheng's voice sounded out. You can give up on taking the test from me. You can see that this source box is not simple. Lu Yin replied, there's no need. This junior can give it a try. Gui Juanheng nodded in admiration. Normal people would naturally give up, but you participated in the battle of the mountain and sea realm. This source box is not unlockable and you should have no problems protecting yourself. The reason why I want you to unlock this source box is because Wu Dan recently advanced to the boundless advanced level, and she unlocked a similar source box. Lu Yin understood that she wanted to compare him to Wu Dan, and this might be Wu Dan's intention as well. This was a challenge and Lu Yin grew excited as he approached the bridge. At the same time, many lockbreakers from various planets in the lockbreaker world were watching this scene, and Wu Dan was no exception. The Lockbreaker Society had a registered membership of 630,000, but in reality the number of lockbreakers in the lockbreaker world was much higher than that. No one had a detailed count of the lockbreakers in the lockbreaker world, and many lockbreakers did not like to show their faces. Of course, even if the number of lockbreakers exceeded this number, it was not by much. Otherwise, lockbreakers would not have been so aloof. News of Lu Yin's boundless advanced lockbreaker test quickly spread throughout the lockbreaker world and then to the outside world. Before long, the Innerverse Lockbreaker Society would also find out. Regardless of how the outside world reacted, Lu Yin did not have the time to care. Using the Aeon derivation scripture, he stepped into the area where the rune lines were spreading out and received the first wave of attacks from the source boxes. A thunderous rumble resounded in his mind and Lu Yin was shocked. This was the power of a predecessor and it was a spiritual force attack at that. It was no wonder why there were so many rune lines. What he saw was completely different from what the bystanders saw, and the bystanders could not even see anything. Spiritual force attacks were formless and invisible. Fortunately, there was still a gap between the spiritual force attacks here and Night King Zhenwu's Night King heaven-splitting technique, and Lu Yin was already a hunter so he could easily withstand the attacks. Otherwise he would have to memorize the Stonewall scriptures. As he approached the bridge, the spiritual force rumbling in Lu Yin's mind became even more powerful. When he was about a meter away from the bridge, he could even see an ancient scene. He saw numerous youths kneeling in front of the bridge while an old man stood on the other side. You wish to join my sect today, so you must cross this bridge to prove your firm will. Those who cross this bridge will join the sect. You cannot cross this bridge, so leave immediately. This bridge represents the immortal glory of my sect, and it will not be tainted by others. The scene changed, and the moment Lu Yin touched the bridge, a terrifying attack descended from the sky and sent the bridge flying. At the same time, the sword chi split the enormous sect behind the bridge in two. We immortals should not be like this. My sect should not be defeated like this. We are unwilling to accept this, so we sealed this bridge. This bridge contains my sect's supreme battle techniques, and whoever obtains them shall rebuild my sect. My sect shall be known as the Stone Soul Sect. Lu Yin pressed a hand against the bridge and his eyes widened. He saw boundless rune lines converging towards him. His gaze turned cold and he immediately recited the Stonewall scriptures. Boundless spiritual force ruthlessly pressed down on Lu Yin, transforming into sounds of battle that spread out in all directions and stirred up the void. End of chapter. Chapter 1197. Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi were terrified and hurriedly retreated. Gui Juanheng's gaze turned cold and he waved his hand, causing the sounds of fighting to disappear. He looked at Lu Yin and saw that beads of sweat were dripping down his forehead. Gui Juanheng nodded in admiration. Lu Yin was indeed worthy of being one of the top experts of the human domain's younger generation, as he was able to withstand such spiritual force. Just because one's power was strong did not mean that one's spiritual force was strong as well. Gui Juanheng flipped through Lu Yin's resume. In the Lockbreaker world, lockbreakers from various planets were all praising Lu Yin. Our Lockbreaker society has a successor. To be able to touch such a source box at such a young age is not simple at all. He's comparable to Wu Dan. Not bad, this kid is from the Outerverse. Jeffrey is very pleased. It's a pity that the old drunkard left. Otherwise he would have another reason to get drunk. Whether or not he can rival Wu Dan will depend on whether or not he has the ability to successfully unlock a source box. Being close to a source box only means that he has sufficient strength. In outer space, Wu Dan stared intently at the screen in front of her. She watched as Lu Yin began to lockbreak and her lips curled up. This was interesting. The Lockbreakers were a transcendental organization, and they could not ignore the Supreme Astral Tournament. The source box array that Wu Dan had mastered was prepared for those top geniuses, but he could not rely on himself. He needed someone to serve as a foil, and Lu Yin was the best choice. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lu Yin began to lockbreak. The Lockbreaker exams strictly prohibited external items, and Lu Yin indeed did not have any external items that he could rely on. Even the upgraded Ink Jade Lake's spring water could not keep up. However, he did not need any external items now, as he could even comprehend source box arrays. His lock-breaking skills had improved tremendously through the Dao Source Sec's primordial unlocking platform and Guyu's notes. Lu Yin's lock-breaking method was different from most other lock-breakers, and it was more similar to the methods of ancient times. He used his star energy to scan the entire stone bridge. In the past, he had looked at the energy on the surface of the source box as if he were looking at a different universe. Now, with his world realm star energy control and his experience in studying Guyu's notes, he was able to easily find the beginning and end of the sealed energy on the stone bridge. Gui Juanheng and the others watched as Lu Yin squatted down and began to lockbreak from a corner. Most of the lockbreakers could not understand what was going on, and only a small portion of them had a change in expression. And he could see the energy. Of course. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. A sealed meridian isn't something that just anyone can do. Not only does one need to be able to control star energy, but they also need experience. Where did this kid get that experience from? Even many boundless advanced lockbreakers have to rely on lockbreaking tools to do so. Innate gifts, battle techniques, and even everything else. Only by using all sorts of methods can one see through a person's veins, but this kid was actually able to find it so easily. His lock-breaking abilities are extraordinary. Whose disciple is he? Seeing the sequence of events was one thing, but being able to unlock it was another, and the speed at which one could unlock it was even more important. Lock-breaking involved too many things, and it could be said that a single lock-breaking session could reveal everything a person had mastered. Lu Yin found the origin and end points of the source box's energy seal on the stone bridge. His eyes turned into runes as he stared at them, and he was able to see through the energy seal. 726 stars revolved around the surface of his body, enveloping the entire stone bridge. Within the lockbreaker world, someone was astonished. It's actually the Sirius art, and it's reached the 3rd stage. Is this kid from the Sirius sect? Someone from my Sirius sect? Ah, that's great. So he's from the Sirius sect. That makes sense. Not far from the planet there was a piece of land above the ocean. This land was where many of the lockbreaker examinations were held. On this land there was a secluded area where a person lived. His name was Xiaoming, and he was the president of the Lockbreaker Society in the Neoverse. He was also a super powerful lockbreaker known as Master Xiaotian. There was a thatched cottage, a flower bed, and a waterfall. This was where Xiaoming lived. Xiaoming sat on a recliner and gently rocked back and forth as he looked at the screen in front of him. He was rather surprised and delighted. What an amazing young man. The society has a successor, But this kid's scheming is deeper than Wu Dan's. Even if his lock-breaking talent is extremely high, his future accomplishments will be limited, and he won't be able to reach the top. What a pity. He should be trained. If he's properly trained, he'll be able to become a president. Jeffrey won't be able to teach him. Xiaoming then seemed to recall something and he opened his gadget. Long time no see. The society doesn't have anything to trouble you with, but you should teach your own student. You should be familiar with Luyin, right? At the peak of Realm Mountain, Elder Chan calmly watched the screen, which was showing the scene of Luyin unlocking the stone bridge. Behind him, Invincible Heizage sat cross-legged on the ground, occasionally looking up with a dejected expression. He sat down cross-legged. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. It was a very simple action, but to Invincible Heizage, it was like purgatory. It was clear that his experience was different from others. Elder Chan, you seem to be very interested in my junior brother, Invincible Heizage asked curiously. Elder Chan calmly replied, don't call him junior brother in the future. I've already told the Elysian Master that Luyin no longer exists on Eternal Sky Island. Invincible Heizage was puzzled. Why? Does Elder Chan have a problem with him? Elder Chan looked at Invincible Heizage. The Elysian Master gave him a choice, but he didn't choose Eternal Sky Island. I gave him a choice as well, but he didn't choose Eternal Sky Island either. This is his fate. His master is someone else, so you don't have to interfere. Master also said that he must have another master, but he didn't say who it was. Is there someone on the fifth mainland who can surpass both my master and you? Invincible Heizage was shocked and even more puzzled. Elder Chan did not answer, and he quietly watched the screen as if he was looking at a treasure. In the Innerverse, at the Lockbreaker Society's headquarters, Casanova was bored and constantly scrolling through his gadget. He wanted to find a beauty to chat with. Not far away, Lu Ji coldly watched a lock-breaking video on the Lockbreaker network. Elsewhere, a man was squatting on the ground and playing a game. He was considered a weirdo among cultivators. Even further away, a young man was leaning against a wall. His body was hidden by the shadows and even his face could not be seen. Many lockbreakers were silent, and they occasionally glanced at the lock-breaking room. No one spoke and the room was very quiet. However, this silence was quickly interrupted. Is that person Luyin? Lu Yin's name did not have much influence in the Neoverse, but everyone in the Innerverse and Outerverse knew who he was. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man with a rather high status in the Innerverse Lockbreaker Society. He was also a boundless advanced lockbreaker, but at this moment he had lost his composure. Casanova and the others looked at him. The middle-aged man tapped his gadget, and a screen appeared in front of everyone. It showed the scene of Luyin unlocking the stone bridge. No one could understand it. The middle-aged man solemnly said, "This image is from the Neoverse. He's currently participating in the assessment." Third update. It's a bit short, but Windborn has done his best. Hang in there for a few more days. Thank you brothers for your support. End of chapter.